Like England, Spain have now won the World Cup final in a red shirt. Like England, Spain have also won the World Cup final in an away shirt. Like only Brazil, Spain have now won the World Cup final in a home shirt and an away shirt. In fact, little sidebar, Brazil, if you count the 1950 final, which was an unofficial final, we know the story now of the 1950 World Cup. The four semi-finalists went into a group stage, a four-team group stage, as opposed to playing knockout matches. But it turned out the final round of matches, you had an effective third, fourth place playoff between Sweden and Spain, and you had an effective final. Brazil only required a draw in their final match, and Uruguay beat them. And because the Maracanazo, it was so shameful for Brazil. They hadn't won the World Cup at that point in time. This was the first time they'd been in the final, official or otherwise. But they had one of the best teams in the world, no doubt about it. They'd been blown away, everybody in sight, until they came up to, well, not really. Let's not get into the 1950 World Cup. We're talking about the 2026 World Cup here. I'm just trying to make a wee point that Brazil were so ashamed of that. They changed their home kit. They actually changed their home kit forever. They get rid of it because they couldn't bear to look at it again. People were committing suicide. There was 200,000 at the Maracana, probably over that, probably 210,000 people, experts reckon, at that game against Uruguay. They go a goal up after like 47 minutes, but they end up losing the game 2-1 despite only requiring a draw to win their first World Cup, and they're devastated. It's a national tragedy. But their home kit at the time, I know it was a white shirt, and here I am on this podcast, I just realised it's a white background and I'm wearing a white t-shirt, which means it's just to emphasise the pink and yellow of my skin tone. You know, I don't think, I'm not a gammon politically, but aesthetically I'm very much, I'm like two gammon steaks slapped together. Also, it's like the pineapple rings being kind of mushed into my coupon as well. But the white shirt, it's not a tribute, not an intentional tribute anyway to that Brazil team. They did wear a white shirt. I think it was maybe dark blue, if not black shorts, and dark blue, brownie, maybe even black socks, dark shorts and socks. And it's testament to 1984. Of course, it was written by Orwell in 1948. He just reversed the digits, and it's only 2 years later that Brazil have the Maracanazo, that terrible game, and you're struggling really unless you get right into it. I know there's plenty of pictures out there of the Brazil teams that played in the first three World Cups wearing the white shirted home kit that they had, but you're actually struggling off the top of your head to recall an image of what the Brazil kit was before 1950, or when they get rid of it in 1950, before the Maracanazo. It was 16th of July 1950, because they had a national competition of some sort. I don't really know the details, and he asked people to suggest a new kit, and of course they come up with this canary yellow top, the light blue shorts, and the white socks, which is now pretty iconic for Brazil. But then it's like 8 years later, 2 World Cups later, when Brazil are back on the cusp of winning the World Cup again. They're back in their first official final, but back at that point in the tournament again, and they're up against Sweden, who wear a yellow top, light blue shorts, and light socks as well. They must have been thinking, getting into that game, Brazil, are you fucking kidding me on? What is going on here? Are we just jinxed? We've actually completely changed our kit, and the next time we're in the deciding match in the World Cup, we're up against somebody who's wearing this kit, and it's Sweden in the finals at the Rosunda in Stockholm, so we've got to wear the away kit. And their blue away kit is equally iconic. Brazil almost equally iconic to the famous home kit. They won that World Cup final. They beat Sweden 5-2. So they've actually played in the World Cup final, even though the 1951 was unofficial, in 2 different home kits, and also won it in an away kit. Brazil, that's the kind of level of statistics you're going to get in this. I would check them. All my statistics come with my factoids come with a health warning, more of which later. But Spain have also become the first team to win the World Cup twice in the 21st century. The only team to win the World Cup twice in the 21st century, but they've also won their first 2 World Cup finals 1-0. They've kept a clean sheet in both their first 2 World Cup finals. Now, like Germany, 2014 beat Argentina 1-0, 1990 beat Argentina 1-0 Germany in the World Cup final. So they've kept 2 clean sheets in the World Cup final. Brazil, they drew 0-0 with Italy in 1994 before beating them in penalties. They They beat the Germans 2-0 in Yokohama, the Yokohama final in 2002. So they've kept 2 clean sheets as well, but not their first games, not their first World Cup finals. I mean, Brazil were a goal down to Sweden in that first World Cup actual World Cup final that they were involved in, official World Cup final in 1958. They won the thing 5-2. Germany were 2-0 down to the Great Hungary team in the 1954 final. Their first after 8 minutes. They eventually beat them 3-2. But then they lost 4 goals to England, of course, in the 1966 final. As everybody knows, conceded 3 goals when they get beat in the 1986 final. I could go on, and I will. But it's quite a thing for Spain to go in there. Their first 2 finals at the World Cup. And they've won the 2 of them by a goal. Clean sheets in both of them. That's got to be a first. There's not a lot of clean sheets in the World Cup final. And I'm going to talk about the final and the finals. I'll need to let you just go on with decide, and you'll probably work it out. If I'm talking about Scotland, I'm talking about qualifying for the World Cup finals, the whole tournament. If I'm talking about Germany, Brazil, Spain, maybe even England, I'm just talking about the various finals that they've played in, although it can only be singular. I mean the actual final match, but it can only be singular when it comes to England, because Spain's victory on Sunday there against Argentina in East Rutherford, New Jersey at the MetLife Stadium in the 2026 World Cup final, the 23rd World Cup final, official or otherwise, means that England are left as the only country to have won their only World Cup final. They're the only country to have won the World Cup just once. How embarrassing must that be? How embarrassing. Now, I know Scotland have never get past the first round of any major competition, but we get to the World Cup, we win 1 game at most, and we go home. And it's consistency. Spain have proven that consistency is the secret to greatness. That's the secret to their success. With Scotland, you can rely on them. England, it's quarter-finals. Sometimes they don't even qualify. Semi-finals. They've been to a final. What are you doing, England? You're all over the place. Make up your mind. What kind of team are you? What kind of nation are you? So it's really embarrassing for England, of course, because they're the only team now to have won the World Cup just once. We're looking at Europe. That was the 13th World Cup won by Europe across 5 different nations. South America stuck on 10. They got to double figures at the last World Cup with Argentina. And that's a World Cup in Qatar. So it's 3 different nations have won the World Cup, a total of 10 times between them for South America. There's still nobody outside South America. You've also got the thing of Spain have now won the World Cup. It used to be a major thing. It was one of those things that you say as a kid. You say at school, it was one of those stats that you knew off the top of your head. Brazil were the only country to have won the World Cup outside their own continent when they won it, the first time they won it in Sweden in 1958, but that's all over the place now. I mean, Brazil themselves won it in Japan in 2002. They won it in the USA, that's North America, in 1994, and then Spain won it in Africa, in South Africa, Johannesburg Soccer City 2010, Iniesta, and then they've won it there. And so Spain basically have won the European Championships more times than anybody else, but they've never played a World Cup final in Europe. Weirdos, absolute weirdos. Everybody won that record. It really is. It's kind of strange. You've got to tidy that up. But I find it quite interesting now. It's like a wee Christmas tree. You've got England right at the bottom there with 1 World Cup, and then above that you get the 3. You get Uruguay, France, and now Spain on 2 World Cups each. Above that, you've got Argentina on 3 World Cups. Then above that, the branches go out again. It's Italy and Germany on 4 each. And right at the top of the Christmas tree, the angel, the star, it's Brazil with their 5 World Cups. Still way out in front, still in front of everybody else. But they better get a move on if they want to stay in front of everybody else. Had the Seleção, the Brazilians. Spain, under Luis de la Fuente, won the Nations League in 2023. Then they won the Euros in 2024. They lost the Nations League final in 2025, and they won the World Cup in 2026. That is a hell of a record. And to someone of my age, and this will be a theme of this podcast, my age. It's already, the minute you open up this, the minute you see my face, my age is a major theme of this podcast. But I'm 57, I'm losing count, I'm 57, and that way, when you get older, it's well known that once you get past 30, the years start flying in. So it only seems very recently, to me, I grew up with Spain and France, and that was the effective final, wasn't it? That was Spain and France were the 2 best teams / squads at this World Cup. Still got to prove it, still got to go all the way. Argentina and England, not too far behind them, but when I was growing up, these were kind of not joke sides, but they were constantly underachieving. they were known as underachievers. And here suddenly, Spain are the only team to have won the World Cup twice in the 21st century. France have been to the World Cup final 2 times in the 21st century. They won the Euros in 2000, on the final of the Euros again in 2016. They've just finished third at this World Cup after finishing second at the last one, first in the previous one, runners-up in 2006 to the Italians. And in Germany, it's quite incredible, this transformation. And it's taken decades, of course. It's taken a century, if you like, if you want to get right into it. But it's quite amazing to see how these countries have transformed themselves. Spain especially. Spain, they haven't lost a competitive match over 90 minutes since Scotland beat them in 2023 in the qualifiers for the Euros. I think I've said it was otherwise. I think I've said that they haven't lost any match since they beat Scotland. But they lost the 2025 Nations League final, as I said, to Portugal in Munich, in the ALLEZ in Munich. It was in Germany, the Nations League kind of playoff final type thing they have. It's the same setup they still have for the Euros. 2 semi-finalists. You get 4 teams, and you get your 2 semi-finals, and then you have the final and the 3rd, 4th place playoff. Just so there's been 4 games played at 2 different stadiums in the one country. It's the same setup now that the Nations League as we used to have for the actual Euros. The football's expanding out of control. The tournaments are expanding out of control in this war between UEFA and FIFA. But they lost that final on penalties. And I think I've said at times, it's Scotland the last team to beat Spain, and that was 2023. We beat them. That was at that game. That was an honour really to have been at that game at Hampden, where Rodri lost his shit. Mr. Golden Ball, deservedly so, gets player of the tournament on Sunday. He's awarded that, captaining the new world champions. Phenomenal player. And he was on his way to winning the Ballon d'Or when he came up against Scotland at Hampden, and they were bitching and moaning about the fact we beat them 2-0. On the night, and just kind of getting about them and stopped them playing their game. There was no fouling or anything going on, no more than usual. No dirty tricks or anything like what they would experience against Argentina. It was just straightforwardly, we're going to try and neutralise you tactically. What a feather in the cap of Steve Clarke, by the way, and what a testament to the job he's done. We should beg him to come back. Never mind, get Messi out of retirement, as Argentina have done. Get Steve Clarke out of resignation and get him back into the Scotland job. But it's like Real Madrid's the last team to beat Real Madrid in a European final was Aberdeen 43 years ago, and the Stefano's Real Madrid losing to Alec Ferguson's Aberdeen in Gothenburg in that Winners' Cup final in 1983, and 10 days later Aberdeen won the Scottish Cup final against Rangers. I was at that game as well, and that's the only 2 times that Gothenburg 11 started a game for Aberdeen. The second time was that Scottish Cup final in 83. So it's quite, I'm kind of tying myself into all these records, but it's a hell of a thing that there was no Real Madrid players in this Spain squad. Cucurella has signed for Real Madrid while he's been away at the World Cup. He signed from Chelsea for Real Madrid, but it's a hell of a thing for Spain not to have any players at this, not any Real Madrid players in their squad, but also what I find even more amazing, looking at the rise of Spain. They're now in this situation where they've played suddenly. It's almost like suddenly to me. I grew up in the 70s and I start remembering football in the late 70s. And then in the 80s, I'm living it. In the 90s, I'm living football. And it's right up. France won the Euros in 84, beating Spain in the final. And then it's basically 1998 with France winning the World Cup before these two nations start really. And by that point, I'm in my late 20s. So it's in me that I can't get out of that headspace. It's really hard to get out of these things, these stats that you take on board when you're younger. It takes you longer when you're older to realise it's not the case anymore. Spain and France are dominating. But looking back at the finals, Spain have now suddenly played 7 major finals. They've played 5 finals of the Euros and 2 finals, and I mean the actual final match of the World Cup. They've won 6 of them. They lost that Euro 84 final in Paris to France. And that's the only one they didn't score in. But they won the Euros in 1964 under Franco, and what a way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the death of Franco. I mean, which was November last year. Spain are European champions just before it, and then they win the World Cup just after it. So maybe people are better off without fascism and authoritarianism. But that when they first won it, the old style Euros, it was the Soviet Union they ended up playing in the final. Franco watching on, and they beat them 2-1 in the Bernabeu in the home final, and it's a a Real Zaragoza player and a Barcelona player who score Spain's 2 goals. Cut to the next player to score in a major final for Spain is Fernando Torres, scoring the only goal of the Euro 2008 final in Vienna against the Germans, and he's a Liverpool player at the time, and an Atletico Madrid hero, but he is a Liverpool player at the time. World Cup final 2010, it's Iniesta who's scoring Andres Iniesta, the greatest passer of the ball I've ever seen in my life, is scoring the only goal of the game against the Dutch in Soccer City, Johannesburg. Barcelona legend. Barcelona, most of the vast majority of his career, Barcelona to his bones. And then you get the 2012 final, it's an explosion, a celebration, the kind of peak moment, obviously. Not the peak moment is winning the World Cup, but just showing exactly what they can do. They're up against Italy, who would take revenge in the next 2 Euros against Spain. But they're up against Italy in Kiev in the Euro 2012 final. They blow them away 4-0. And you've got David Silva, who was at Manchester City at the time. He scores the first goal. Jordi Alba, who was a Valencia player, but he just signed for Barcelona about 2 days before that final. He's Valencia through and through, but he goes to Barcelona on paper just before that final was played. He scores, and then it's Fernando Torres again, the only guy to score in 2 separate finals, the actual final of the Euros. By this point, he's a Chelsea player, as is Juan Mata, who gets the 4th goal, I think. The 2 of them get the last 2 goals anyway. An absolute blitz from Spain. And then you've got... We thought Spain had gone. Oh, was that it? I was kind of worried for Spain that they just peaked. They kind of showed up. They had this moment of, it's all come together for us. It's off the back of Johan Cruyff, basically. The forerunner of tiki-taka was perfected by Pep Guardiola, who's Catalan to his bones. And then they've had this great spell where they've won the Euros, the World Cup and the Euros. An amazing thing, but it was almost too much, so they've kind of faded away. And they were last 16 in the group stage of the following World Cup in 2014, and then they went out last 16, I think, in 2018 and 2022 on penalties both times. And then Italy do them, I think it was last 16 of Euro 2016, and of course they beat them in the semi-final on penalties at Wembley, a great game. And Italy beat them with penalties in the semi-final at Wembley of Euro 2020, played in 2021. You're thinking, is that it? Is that it for Spain? Are they not coming back? Have they had their moments? They're back in a semi-final, and that used to be a rarity for Spain. Maybe that's their level now. They were always underachieving, and they went and overachieved, and they've just simmered down to being, that's about a semi-final team at most now. No. West Germany, West Germany was just a kind of almost a nickname. It's a colloquialism. It's still the Deutscher Fußballbund in the German Democratic Republic. Sorry, that was not the German Democratic Republic. The DDR was subsumed into the German Federal Republic, just as the East German football was subsumed into the Deutscher Fußballbund and the Bundesliga, etc. So it's the same country. But Germany won the Euros in 1972, then the World Cup in 1974, and they reached the final, more of which later, of the Euros in 1976. And they lost, but it was, my God, what a performance. But Spain almost turned it unreal. They were the only team to have hold both the Euros and the World Cup at the same time. And they'd done it in that particular order. No one had won the World Cup, then the Euros. So Spain turned up and they win the Euros, then the World Cup, then the following Euros, just to make it that shit. And now they've done it again the other way. They've turned up Euro 2024. You get Nico Williams of Athletic Club Bilbao, the Basque, and the other legendary Basque club, or the biggest of the Basque clubs. It's the winner. It's scored in the Euro 2024 final against England. The winner scored by Oyarzabal. And he's from Real Sociedad. And now you've got the World Cup final. Ferran Torres, it's a Barcelona player scoring again. It's unbelievable. There's not a single Real Madrid player, despite Real Madrid having been champions of Europe more times than anybody else. And they do that on a lot of foreign players, obviously, but for them not to have, and there's this thing, the barroom philosophizing and the barroom psychologists and psychiatrists, political experts in the 70s, 80s, 90s were thinking the reason Spain can't win a major international tour. I mean, they won that Euros in '64, but that was at home. There was a lot of dodgy politics going on at that time. The reason they just can't do it, despite having all these great players, is because they don't get on because of the factionalism, the regionalism, the really strong regional identity. And there's strong regional identities in all nations. There's reasons for international teams to fall out with each other. Every squad can be falling out with each other. And it used to be the Dutch, it would implode the Dutch and it would strengthen the Germans. They'd all have a fallout, but come out stronger after the Dutch would have a fallout and never talk to each other again and couldn't quite get the glory they deserved. But you thought it must be terrible in Spain because you've got the whole Franco, and it's especially in the 70s and 80s. Franco's still in power. It's 1975, I think he died. 75, sorry, November 75, that he dies. And democracy was, it was in there, but it was kind of tenuous at times. I remember as a kid watching that fella, that mad major or field marshal, whatever he was, walking into the Spanish Parliament and just firing shots into the air, up into the ceiling, saying, that's it, the military's taken over again, military coup. And it failed, but it was tenuous in Spain for a while. The whole Barcelona thing, that they can only speak Catalan at the Nou Camp, and this is why, and they hate Madrid. They hate that kind of the centralisation of the government that Franco wanted. He wanted everyone to be based in Madrid, where the Catalans had a very distinct identity, and the Basques and the Basque separatist group ETA. They were in the news when I was a kid as often as the IRA, blowing up people, killed over nearly 900 people killed by ETA. As they tried to assert their Basque identity, they wanted to break away. They wanted to not be a part of Spain anymore. And you've got like Galicia, Andalusia as well. I don't know the exact. There's always people of various political persuasions in all these massive regions of any country. But I know that Spain would go to Seville, the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan, Sevilla's grounds, when I was a kid, when they needed a result in a qualifier, and a great record in qualifying, Spain. Because they would go to the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan, and that would be their 12th man. The atmosphere there was unbelievable. I remember watching Scotland, Jock Stein, Scotland losing there 1-0 in a qualifier back in the day, and Jim Leighton's getting pelted with nails and bottles and things like that. But that was the great atmosphere. So they're very fervently pro-Spain, but other parts of Spain aren't. And I don't know what's happening. I've read a wee article. Was it Politico? Didn't really give me a lot of... The Politico website didn't really give me a lot of feedback, but I doubt they're up and doing the Las Ramblas celebrating Spain winning that game. Or are they? It's just so notable that it ends up far from being the thing that is dividing, and it'll always divide Spain, obviously, that political thing. It's actually the players who represent these very proudly separatist, almost, they want to be a very separate identity anyway. Clubs in these regions are the ones that are providing the goal scorers in the big moments, the ones that are providing the backbone, the inspiration for Spain's transformation into underachievers, the greatest team of the 21st century. I find it really interesting. How you doing, folks? My name is Alec Anderson, and this is your, in no way, immediate post the bronze final and World Cup final reaction pod, and semi-immediate post-World Cup 2026, because it was 5 weeks out of our lives. Whether you're watching every game or not, it was impossible to watch every game, but how many ever games you were watching, it doesn't really matter. It was massive, it's gargantuan, and it's something that needs to be kind of briefly reviewed. Brief, no one compared to my other pods, but brief compared to how much reviewing it should be getting after 104 games and 5 weeks of major international football reaction pod. Coming to you in association with Jersnet. Jersnet back on your screens. Check out Jersnet every Friday, 9 p.m, every Sunday, 9:30 p.m, live on the Jersnet YouTube channel. And I'm coming to you in association with that. I'm also coming to you in association with Celebrations, Cadbury's Heroes, a bit of Quality Street as well. They kind of creepy chocolates. The adverts are kind of creepy, but I quite like them. My wife got a few. The Lindor chocolates. I quite like them. She's like, she got a few as presents for people. And I don't really like them. I might fire them over here. I'll have some of them. Probably IPA. What was I having? The Northern Monk Faith IPA, hazy. If you know the whole kind of folk singing woolly jumper type artisanal beers that you just, despite you fight it, but when you get to my age, they're the only things that are really working. I had quite a lot of them, a lot of the Blue Moon beers, and what else? I had Peroni, a lot of Peroni. A few different bottles of wine, Montepulciano, de Brut, Sol, Côte d'Or, all the kind of cheap stuff you get in Morrison's, Robinson's lime cordial, Morrison's own brand soda water, Tetley caffeinated and decaffeinated tea, and basically I'm sponsored by all and of course you get sorry I don't want I'm pointing to the cupboard down there in which I keep my Golden Wonder cheese and onion, and of course the McCoy's flame grilled roasted ridged steak, crisp 6-packs of them, all the things that have kept me semi-awake or have kept me going. That's what my hydration breaks were spent putting together during this last 5 weeks of football that are almost impossible to take on board. I don't know what you did. I sat down and worked it out the other day. There was 104 games played at that World Cup. Of course, you can only watch, if you're going to sit there and watch them all live, watch as many as possible live, you can only watch 92 live because the final 2 group games in each group, and it was 12 groups, are played simultaneously and have been since 1982. Bob Valentine, the shame of Hee-Haw. So you can't, there's 12 games that you have to miss at this World Cup if you're going to try and watch them all live. So that's leaving you 92 games, and I'm pretty sure I haven't sat down and gone through all the games, and I can still recall at this point in time how many I've watched. It was 38. I think I've only watched 38 live. So I think, well, why is that? Why do you look so completely fucked, Alec? You know, apart from the usual, apart from just eating too much and drinking too much and not getting enough exercise, why do you look completely exhausted? Well, I think there's the heat. In Glasgow, the Glasgow heat wave has been too much for a baldy exchanger who's morbidly obese like myself. But also, I'm doing this thing where I had decided there's no way I can keep up with this World Cup. There's no way I can do my usual and try and watch as many games as possible. It will kill me. I just don't have the time. There's other stuff I've got to do, like washing, and putting the kettle on, things like that. Going for a pee every now and then. I'm not going to have the time to do it, but I just set to record series on both channels on ITV and BBC, so every single game, I had the full coverage of every single game, whether it get played at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 1 in the morning, whatever. And I tried to get up the next day. There's games going on in the middle of the night. I was refusing to watch, although that started to get to me as well. I found myself unable to go to bed, unable to sleep because I knew games were on. It's my usual football addiction. That is an addiction. And I would get up the next day, having recorded it, and there's an 8-minute highlights package or a 5 minutes highlights package offered by both channels. Really easily accessible. Just click play, and you can watch the highlights package of Uzbekistan against Colombia at the Azteca. I'm like, I tried that a few times, but I couldn't. I'd forgotten what happened. And I have this thing, you need to watch everything, I find, to really absorb it. If you're going to be a football fan, if you're going to talk about football, spout about it the way I do, you should have half an idea, at least, just enough of an idea about stuff to get yourself into trouble. I need to remember a basic amount of stuff. You need to know, get a feel for this World Cup, what's happening. It's a major moment in football. But if I watch the highlights, I just forget what's happened. But if I take the whole game that I've recorded and I watch the national anthems as the teams come down the big tunnels, the spinal tap style tunnels, like, where are we? Where's the entrance onto the stadium? Hello, Oklahoma, whatever it is we're supposed to be in that scene in the original Spinal Tap film. That's what it was like. The players come down these massive tunnels in these big American venues. I'll watch that. I'll watch the national anthems for some reason. I hear a few of the stats churned out by the commentators at the beginning of the game. And then I just start fast forwarding. I'll have the BBC Sports app open. I'll see the times of the goals, and I'll fast forward. But not that thing where you just fast forward to a certain. You can read the minutes, but not see the action. I'm fast forwarding at maximum, fast forwarding where you can watch the action, in the hope that I'll catch any near misses, offsides, big fouls or anything like that. I'll go through and I'll see the goals. And then I'll just fast forward to the end and get a bit of reaction at the final whistle just before it and just after it. And then a bit of the pundits kind of chat about it. And then I'll remember it. Then I feel as if I've watched it. But that, with 92 games, it turns out it's 104 games. It's fucking exhausting. You don't actually have enough time. I still haven't seen Spain against Saudi Arabia. I still haven't watched, what is it? New Zealand. Did New Zealand play Egypt? New Zealand, Egypt. Iran, Egypt. I haven't watched Iran, Egypt. There's games there that I've still got the full game left, and I haven't even managed the time to fast forward through them and watch them. It's it's been draining. It's been absolutely draining. I don't know what you did, folks. I don't know what we did, but it's a hell of a thing. My name is Alec Anderson. I had to let it happen. I had to change. Couldn't stay all my life down at heel. Looking out of the window, staying out of the sun. So I chose freedom, running around trying everything new, but nothing impressed me at all. I never expected it to. Don't cry for me, Argentina. I'm in a buggy with fat Ronaldo and Ronaldinho. Albiceleste, what's up with your face? You look more albino because you've gone chalk white. I think that's probably Eva Peron. She's in the back of a buggy, an Argentinian national icon, a heroine, and she's in the back of a buggy, clearly enjoying herself, and so would I. Anybody would enjoy themselves if they're in the back of a buggy that's been driven. But you get Ronaldinho sitting in the passenger seat in the front, and he's a dude. Everybody, he's one of the greatest players I've ever seen in my life. Seen him a few times at Ibrox, different clubs, and that. Fantastic. In fact, I've seen him in Barcelona, PSG, and a friendly with Milan. Ronaldinho 3 times. I never saw Ronaldo Nazario de Lima. I never saw the phenomenon, and he's watching him on television at a time when I was still trying to play football. He's just one of the greatest strikers I've ever seen in my life. Phenomenal indeed. He's probably the most skillful striker, the most striking. Sort of Batistuta was quite electric, quite explosive. But Ronaldo's just the original Ronaldo. He'll always be the original Ronaldo for me. And he's sitting there. Ronaldinho, he's a party guy. You know, he likes to drink, he likes to dance and all that. And he's fantastic with the tricks. But Ronaldo, not really getting a lot of movement. Almost as fat as me. But that big cheesy grin, just that. I love the Coca-Cola and the chocolate as much as I loved scoring goals, and I love a boogie. I've got Madge in the back of this buggy here, by the way, and out onto the pit. It was, I know the Razzmatazz went too far, and the halftime show was disgusting, but it was just a bit of a waste of time. It's what the Americans do, you know. I think if Donald Trump wasn't in power, you would quite enjoy the tack. It's like you go to a World Cup, you watch a World Cup, you want to see a bit of the local culture, and that's what it is. That's what it is in the States. It's Razzmatazz. It's Hollywood. It's you. I equated it to like when you go to maybe your gran's or an auntie or somebody you know that just wants to feed you. Even this is somebody like me. This is probably why I'm so. That probably started me off on the fat road because it can't be my fault. It has to be somebody else's fault. But even if you had a full meal and you're totally stuffed and you turn up at the door like, you want a sandwich? Okay, there's some chips here. I can just put some chips on. I've got the fat still melted for the. You know what? I've maybe sat some. I think there's a pie in the back of that fridge. I'll put that on for you. You're like, no, and that's what the Americans were like. They could. You want some? We'll have a concert at half time. You want some Razzmatazz? You want some Hollywood? No, you don't want to. Get Tom Cruise on, right? We don't really need that. No. Jennifer Hudson, she'll sing in national anthem. Get some planes flying over the top. We'll get the guys in for the wrestling. They had a big countdown. You know, let's get ready to rumble. You must want a bit of that. You know, fuck, whatever. Just on you go. Because Donald Trump's tack is he's a psychopath, certainly a sociopath and venal scum. What he's doing in the White House now, the office of the White House, but it's. The symbol of it is putting all that gold leaf stuff and that all over He's no taste whatsoever. So he's sitting up after 10 minutes of the World Cup final, he's sitting up in his own little box up there, the president's box, whatever, with Infantino. And he's like, you think at least Salome was sexy. You know, bring me the World Cup trophy. I want to touch it. Now remember, Donald, you can't keep it. He's got it up there. They bring him the trophy. Infantino's going, yeah, there you go, Donald. That's what they're playing for. No. The value of nothing, the price of everything, that's the most dazzling thing. That's what they're all playing for. I want that. I want to touch it. I want to think, he's so tacky, but he's kind of psychopathic. He's completely feral, that guy. Don't let that. I love the States, greatest country in the world and all that. Britain's greatest country in the world for me, but States are a very close second and so much a part of the culture. In fact, it's just unfortunate who's in control just now, but the tack. That's fine, but that's part of what you expect from a World Cup in the USA. and they didn't let us down. But maybe that's why Argentina started losing their shit. It was because Spain were just passing them to death because they couldn't get the ball. But maybe it was because they saw Evita, they saw Eva Perón getting driven about in a taxi by some Brazilians, and they don't care for the Brazilians, Argentinians, some legendary Brazilians, and she was clearly having a great time. And who wouldn't, in the back of a buggy with Ronaldo and Ronaldinho? That was the best bit of the halftime show for me. It's just I stopped it there. Aye. So, I want to go over. I'll start off my snagging items. I'll start off, what's that? 35 minutes, and I'm starting off with my snagging items from the World Cup pods that I've done. I've had my Rangers Cincinnati in friendly post-match reaction, but you're owed this pod. I did this pod before, and it just went to pieces, which I'll explain. But start off with Messi 2002. I think I said in my preview pod for the final and the bronze final. I did a preview pod last Friday. I think I'd mentioned, and I was confused by the fact I was talking about Argentina and how the Argentina at the World Cup from 1978 through to the present day, there's only been the two World Cups, 1998 and 2002, where neither Maradona nor Messi were a kind of playing possibility, weren't playing or could have been playing. And what had got me was Maradona had played for Argentina before the 78 World Cup. It was the first World Cup I remember, but he'd played for them in 1977 when he was like 16, 17 years old. He played for the full men's team. And then he didn't make it into Cesar Menotti's squad for the 78 World Cup, which, despite the fact Argentina won that World Cup anyway, it was really, really open-minded and cool about that. Diego, if you've read his biography, he's brilliant. Diego Armando, what a character. But he was picked for that squad. He wasn't picked for that squad, although he had played for the national team. And I was talking about the 2002 World Cup. It was the last time Messi hadn't played for Argentina, incredibly. I was thinking, but I don't really know what happened. I don't know if Messi was available, was he injured, or was he maybe considered just too... I think I'd got him confused with Maradona being about 60. Messi was 14 the 2002 World Cup kicked off. So he probably still could have done an absolute job for Argentina, but he turned 15, I think, after the quarter-final stage of that World Cup in 2002. And Argentina hadn't got out the group stage. They hadn't got out the group, so he was a bit too, even for Messi, he was probably a bit too young to have played for Argentina then, so that was a bit stupid. Croatia. I have this thing I was talking earlier about. You get stats in your head when you're a young guy. I'm still like Brazil, the only team to win the World Cup 3 times. They've won it 5 times now. Germany, Argentina, and Germany and Italy have won it 4 times. Each Argentina won it 3 times. But you get these stats stuck in your head. One of them was, and for the last 16 years, Spain and England were the only countries to have won their only World Cup final. But I used to throw in, and Sweden have lost their only World Cup final because Czechoslovakia and Hungary have also finished runners-up in the World Cup without ever winning it. But they both lost 2 finals each, Czechoslovakia and Hungary. And Sweden are the only team to have... But Croatia, for 8 years now. Croatia, and I love that Croatia team. And I watched that final. It was a great final against France in the Luzhniki in Moscow 2018. They lost 4-2 to France in that final, and I'm always going on about it's an example to Scotland. Croatia, 3.5 million people. Scotland, population of 5 million. Population's got nothing to do with it. We should be winning World Cups. We should be getting to the World Cup final, the final of the Euros and all that, which Croatia have never done, but so I'm sorry to Croatia for that continue. It's just because it's just the familiarity of that stat in my head. So there's 4 countries who have reached a World Cup final but never won it. Sweden and Croatia, once each. Czechoslovakia and Hungary, twice each. I was also talking about Germany, the penalties. I've seen when they lost to Paraguay, that was the only time the Germans had ever lost in the World Cup on penalties to anybody. The Germans have a fearsome reputation from the penalty shootouts, but I think I just left it at that's the only time the Germans have ever lost a competitive match, a majorly competitive match on penalties. It isn't, because they lost the Panenka, the famous Panenka penalty that was scored in the final of the Euros to beat the Germans. Germany lost that Euro 76 final against Czechoslovakia on penalties in Yugoslavia, and the other, the Maracana. It's nicknamed the Maracana, the Red Star Stadium in Belgrade, But Germany lost that. Germany, the holders of the World Cup and the Euros at the time, they lost their Euros title to the Czechoslovakia in that final. I don't know the guy that scored the winning penalty. It was Antonin somebody. I can't remember his second name. So that was still got a very good record in the penalties, Germany, but they lost that. And I kept talking about Spain's loss to Scotland was the only time they've lost. The last time they'd lost a game. Back in 2023, that Euros qualifier at Hampden, because of course they lost that final in penalties, the Nations League final in penalties in Munich in 2025, but that was not after the extra time in penalties. But in fairness, I'm in good company, because people keep talking, lots of our commentators and pundits keep talking about the fact that Fabian Ruiz of Spain, he's had 50 caps and he's never lost a game while playing for Spain, and he played in that game. He came off before the penalties were taken, but he played in that game in which Spain lost that that Nations League final against the Portuguese in 2025. The most major snagging item of all is this is the second time I've recorded this pod. It was 2.25 hours. It's probably going to be longer this time, but I just need to get it out there. I told you I was going to do a pod about the World Cup final. I did preview pods for the final and the bronze medal match. You deserve a brief reaction to that, and you deserve to hear something about the World Cup because it's so major. And I did a pod the other night, and many thanks and apologies. I think it's David Shaw, and I'm sorry, David, it just came up briefly on my laptop, and he alerted me to the first mistake I'd made. It took me like 2.5 hours, I think, to record, and that was about the third attempt at it as well. It's the heat. It's the heat just now, me being so fat and old, lack of sleep during the World Cup, but also, you might have got, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to talk about first. And when you go into a 2-hour pod, you start wondering if you've mentioned something already that you want to talk about then. I've got brief notes here, but I try to do it as naturalistic as possible. I try to give you my genuine reaction to stuff, so I don't want to make it kind of scripted. But it took me 2.5 hours to record that, 2.25 hours to record that, and then I sat, and the least I can do for you is timestamp it, break it up into little segments so you can navigate it. But it takes me about another 2 hours to do that, because I've got to go through the whole podcast again, deciding where little subjects I'm taking on start and end, and giving them a little title. So they're all time-stamped below in the description below these YouTube podcasts. And that takes me about another 2 hours. So I'm sitting there, I think about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I finally, I've just done the last timestamp. That's it. That's far too long, but I've got it done. I've said what I have to say. I can move on with my life. And up came David down the bottom right-hand side of my laptop that I was just about to set down, saying, Alec, it was Hungary that beat El Salvador 10-1 in the 1982 World Cup. Not, as I had said, Yugoslavia beating them 11-1. I actually felt quite good. As I said in my Rangers Son Etienne podcast, I felt quite relieved that I hadn't said it was Honduras, just to get it wrong as many ways as possible. But I went in to look at that. Oh, thanks, Dave. Right, thanks for letting me that, mate. And I make mistakes all the time, and all my opinions are just totally subjective. Making massive mistakes all the time, but one maybe two in a podcast is okay. But when I went back in, I realised I'd just been talking gibberish. Not the kind of controlled gibberish or the gibberish I want to talk like I'm doing just now, but I was saying things that it wasn't a mistake as such. Well, it was a mistake, but it was stats that I did know. I hadn't forgot it. Just in my head, my mouth wasn't working properly. And like England had lost 3-0 to Belgium in the 2018 bronze medal match when I know it was 2-0. The Mikel Merino is on a goal every 2 games roughly for Spain, when I know it's Mikel Oyarzabal, but they've got the same Christian name, so that confused me with that. And there was 3-4, and every time I moved to a different part of it, and I hadn't noticed it when I was timestamping it, suddenly my eyes were open. This was like 4 or 5. But if anybody's putting 4 or 5 major mistakes, if anybody's putting that amount of time into watching my pods, the least I can do is try and correct stuff. I haven't even got the technical know-how, or I think probably the attachment, the software to go in and just flash up on the screen. I can to edit stuff that I've said, maybe talk over it or flash up on the screen. You know, people do that. You'll see them putting up text on screen when they make a mistake, correcting themselves. I know a lot. You should all just listen to my pods. Don't watch them. So that was that. So I'm in the kitchen because this is the rest is football on Netflix. I watched a few episodes of that. Jesus Christ. What Alan Shearer does. I don't have the charcuterie. I don't have the red wine. But here I am. You know, I was a bit worried. Of course, I'm just basically saying the same thing I said in my podcast the other night. So apologies to the 25 or 50 people who watched that before I took it down in the small hours of Wednesday. I think Wednesday morning. Although you've watched and then maybe try to watch it, this is just the same thing. It's going to be exactly the same as far as I can remember it. This will be exactly the same bit. As I was saying to somebody last night, my patter doesn't change between podcasts anyway. I've been ranting on about the same. I've got the same attitude to Rangers as I had 4 years ago. It's the same old stuff that I'm saying consistently. There's nothing original about my patter anyway. This is just an extreme example, but I'm in the kitchen here because what's the rest of this? That's what they do. You get a wee kind of kitchen vibe on Netflix. Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer, Micah Richards. I know Micah Richards lost his dad now. That was very emotional. It was nice, but they were doing my nutting. It was just the guys that have played the game at that level, especially Shearer, who I saw scoring that goal against Germany at Wembley in '96. I was at that game, that semi-final in the Euros, to finish top scorer at that Golden Boot at the Euros, and Lineker himself, who's been Golden Boot at a World Cup and played the game to such a great level, just to be reduced to that kind of. You like a bit of banter, that's good. It's good to but that being the main point, it seems, and they're swearing. And I mean, come on to fuck. What the fuck's happening? And it's just always set up now. It's painful to listen to the swearing. And Alan Shearer's thing is he calls people, he calls out the clothes they're wearing, you know, by nicknaming the manufacturer, the brand of clothes in a kind of derogatory way. It was like Dolce and Gabbana, that's Dodgy and Gabbana you're wearing. And you've got, a Jasper Conman shirt that you're wearing. And they're all rolling about laughing. I thought, what is this all about? And while I'm doing my snagging items, that's what leads me on to probably stupid. I mean, Alan Shearer's fine. A bit professional misery guts. It's all very golf club. It's all very, and you can kind of feel an almost contempt, I think, for analysing the game itself. They're continually referencing the fact that this is their work, or they can't wait to go for a holiday and what. And that's fine. You like a bit of that, a bit of honesty, but it can go too far. You're thinking, well, why am I here then? If you're not enjoying this, why should I be here? It gets all a bit golf clubby and samey and a bit bitchy and all that, and they're all trying to have a laugh all the time. It's really just slagging. There's nothing funny about it. But Alan Shearer is because they're so ubiquitous. They're obviously all free agents, and they're on BBC, then they're on the rest is football. And Gary Lineker's done fantastic with his whole goal hanger production team. There's some great stuff out there. I love The Rest is History. The Rest is Politics is great as well. I really enjoy The Rest is Entertainment occasionally. Marina Hyde's fantastic. So it's a great kind of little empire he's got going there. But I was getting to find it really bad. Alan Shearer, just to kick off, in the World Cup final, I don't know if Wayne Rooney repeated him later on or Wayne Rooney had already made this point. And then I think Gary Neville said, I started off watching it on ITV because ITV started the final coverage quarter of an hour earlier. Good move. But then, of course, they're trying to make up for the fact that they're going to have adverts. They're going to have commercials. So I watched the first quarter of an hour into about half an hour of ITV's coverage of the final, and then I watched BBC for the rest of it. I watched the actual game in BBC, and then the next day I went on and I watched ITV's commentary of extra time, and I watched their reaction to it. It's addictive. It wasn't an enjoyable World Cup, I wouldn't say, only sometimes, but it's all consuming. It was kind of monumental rather than being entertaining. It's vitally important rather than being good. It's just something I had to watch. I did enjoy vast aspects of it. I loved it, obviously, at a certain level, but it was more draining than anything else, maybe just my age. But there's a thing said about how the day before, England beaten France epically in the fourth place playoff, now called the bronze medal match. Kylian Mbappe sealing or going ahead at that point in time at kick-off in the World Cup final. Mbappe was 2 goals ahead in the race for the Golden Boot, and it would stay that way. That wasn't fair. And fair play, England. The English media will slag England rotten. The British media, but English-based, they will slag the England national team as soon as the England national team slip up in any way. But they're really, really generous. Even with Argentina, when there's so much edge there and all that, they're really generous with their opponents. fantastic about Maradona, even though he did the hand of God goal against them, and they're all in love with Messi. They wanted Messi to get this golden boot, obviously, but this thing that it was unfair. The golden boot race was unfair because Mbappe had got to play in the third, fourth place match. Therefore, Messi's playing a much more meaningful match in the World Cup final. Spain are the best team in the tournament so far. Much more difficult opponent than their own country. But a much more difficult opponent than England. And two teams that had lost the semi-final obviously aren't really trying. That means that Kylian Mbappe's teammates aren't trying, and they clearly fucking weren't in that first half against England in Miami. They needed a bollocking and a few substitutions at half-time. But Kylian Mbappe goes out and scores 2 goals in a game where his teammates aren't trying against a team that's 4-0 up against them by half-time. The third, fourth place, that surely is harder than scoring for Argentina where everybody's totally psyched. And if you start talking about what game's more important, what game people are trying harder, and what's the more difficult opponent, this entire World Cup is bogus. You had 72 games in the group stage to eliminate 16 of 48 teams. Most of that was meaningless in a different sort of way. And both Messi's goals scored in the group, 6 goals he scored in the group stage, that was all considered perfectly adequate. And in the group stage, Messi's Argentina are playing against Algeria from the African nation, Jordan from Asia, and Austria from Europe. France are up against, Senegal from Africa. They were up against Iraq from obviously the Asian Confederation, and Norway. So Norway and Austria, the teams that Argentina and France are up against, European teams, both really decent football nations, haven't been at World Cup for far too long. So it was almost eeksy-peeksy in terms of who they were playing in the group stage. And then you've got, and I've written this down just to remember it, in the round of 32, France played Sweden while Argentina played Cape Verde. Round of 16, France played Paraguay, who just put out Germany and were absolute animals and just psyched out their skull, while Argentina played Egypt, who were tremendous, but France in the quarterfinal played Morocco, who got to the semi-finals at last of a World Cup. Argentina in the quarterfinal played Switzerland, and a quarterfinal is the furthest Switzerland have ever got in any competition, and Switzerland had a man sent off. And in the semi-final, Argentina play England and Spain. France are up against Spain, who are the best team in the world. So the idea, I think through the knockout stages, Mbappe, he's scoring up to the quarter final. Neither Mbappe or Messi score in the semi-final. But the idea that it's rigged, well, all football is rigged in that case, unless you're playing against exactly the same level of opponent. And there's times I made this point in my preview last Friday about the bronze medal match. I said, I made a wee headline on the thumbnail, just kind of taking the piss out of engagement farming. Go a totally OTT headline. I'm taking the piss out of the fact I'm just saying something controversial to get likes. The third, fourth place match is the best match at the World Cup. Well, it turned out it kind of was. Your weekend was made, if you're just like front of the brain, lots of goals, end-to-end stuff. That was one of the greatest games of all time. England against France. It was like you had a game with what people see as being zero peril involved in it. And it's a total goal fest and 10 goals. And then on the Sunday night, 24 hours later, you've got a game where it's the most peril there will ever be in any football match. It's the World Cup final, and there's only 1 goal in it. And people are slagging how it wasn't a great final. It was a terrible final, not a lot of goal mouth action. And it's like, what do you want? What is it you want out your football? I'm always stunned. And that's why I end up being really sympathetic to England, because we do the same in Scotland, even in our reduced scale of expecting everything instantly when you've not had any glory since 1960. That's the only ultimate glory you've ever had at a World Cup, and yet when you fail to get there, despite getting closer than you've ever been since 66, when you fail to go all the way, it's not good enough, it's crap. Kylian Mbappe, and I'll start with this, the Golden Boot. In that match, he scores 2 goals for a France team. Eventually scored 4 goals. It's a fantastic game of football. It's fantastic entertainment. He has become the first player ever to score in 3 post-semi-final matches at the World Cup. That's the first time that's ever happened. He scored in the final in 2018. He scored a hat-trick in the final in 2022. And then he scored in the third, fourth place playoff. It became only the second player ever to have scored in the World Cup final and the bronze medal match. Helmut Rahn of West Germany scored in the 1954 final, triumph of their boss of Nuremberg. That's not Helmut, that's Max Morlock. But anyway, Helmut Rahn scored in the 1954 final for the West Germans against the Hungarians when they won that, and then he scored in the 1958 bronze medal match, which they lost 6-3 to France. So France are the only nation to have scored and conceded 6 goals in the bronze medal match, the third, fourth place playoff. But Mbappe is now only the second guy ever to have scored in the final and the third, fourth place playoff, as well as also being one of the 5 players who've scored in 2 different finals of the World Cup. He's only 27. And is only the 4th man ever, and we saw it happening in front of our eyes if you're watching it in telly, watching the action from the Hard Rock Cafe, the Hard Luck Cafe, the Hard Luck Stadium in Miami on Saturday night. He's only the 4th guy ever to achieve double figures at a World Cup. We had Gerd Müller in 1970 in Mexico hitting 10, and that's the biggest tally we've had there. That's the biggest tally we've had from any striker, any goal scorer at a World Cup since Gerd Müller 56 years ago, at a time when the World Cup was only 6 games you played in the World Cup finals. Now it's 8, yeah, but Gerd Müller, absolutely amazing. And then you had Sandor Kosi's got 11 goals in the 1954 World Cup for the great Hungarian team, and Just Fontaine. And none of these guys have won the World Cup. All these guys went out, lost the final or lost in the semi-finals. But Just Fontaine, Frenchman, are playing for France, born in Marrakech. But he's playing for France. He scores 4 goals in that 1958 third place bronze medal match for France against the Germans. And there's Mbappe out there being France's greatest ever World Cup goal scorer, and he's also going out in front of Messi as well. 22 goals he's got in the World Cup finals. I think Messi's got 21. Messi might not play in the next World Cup. The chances are he probably won't, but the chances are fairly even. But you've got to think Mbappe, if he keeps playing, he could play, because he's only 27 years old, he could play probably 3 more World Cups if he keeps going to Messi's age. Messi just turned 39 during this World Cup, because Mbappe, as I say, is 27 years old. He won't turn 28 until December. And that is the thing. I think that's what's happened with France. He's turned 28 in December. He was born in December 1998, Kylian Mbappe. And France won their first World Cup about 6 months before that. I'm 14 years old. I'm at my gran's. I think it was my gran's birthday. Can't be sure. And the Euro final, the only game that was shown live from Euro 84 was the final, which was France against Spain. None of the home nations had qualified for it, and in those days, television wasn't deregulated the way it is now. So even the epic semi-final, one of the greatest games of all time, certainly John Watson's commentary, one of the greatest of all time, is transfixed by this match. France against Portugal, 2 countries who at that point had never reached a major final. In Marseille, it's France against Portugal. Crowd's amazing. It's just phenomenal. Both the guys were number 3, scoring 2 goals, one in normal time and one in extra time for each of the 2 teams. It's 2 each. And we're heading towards penalties. And remember, France had just lost the 1982 World Cup semi-final to Germany on penalties in Seville. And then it's Tigana, still Tigana, Platini, go! I've not seen a match like this for years. It was what a team they were. And watching San Etienne at Ibrox the other night, and Platini was away at Juventus by that point, but he's a San Etienne icon. It was a great game. That was still highlights we got on the Saturday night. It's just match of the day type highlights on the Saturday night, 20-minute package shown, because the home nations weren't there. But the thing that was also evident, even as a kid, was that the English kept kind of pitying France. Oh, they're the Brazilians of Europe. Everybody called them the Brazilians of Europe. Platini, Gires, Fernandes, all these, Jean Tigana, fantastic team, beautiful to watch. They'd hosted the Euros in 1960, the first Euros. I think they'd beaten the semi-final. They'd lost that semi-final in the 1958 World Cup to young Pelé. But that great Brazil team, but they invented all the tournaments. They invented, Jules Rimet invents the World Cup. You've got Gabriel Hanel invents the European Cup via France Football or L'Equipe. And the Euros, the trophy Euros, is the Henri Delaunay trophy. The French are inventing all the football stuff. And they've got these massive clubs and these great venues. And the clubs struggle in Europe as well. It's only PSG in the last year winning 2 Champions Leagues that have given France a semi-respectable record in Europe. Before that, they only won as many European trophies as Scotland, despite their massive money and their fantastic domestic setup. But the French were massive underachievers, and so were the Spanish. And the Spanish were brutal. They were horrific. They were the filthiest country in Europe, I would say. And there's a lot of competition back in those days. Football was a different sport back then. But this idea, we're suddenly getting... We had it all a decade and more ago with Barcelona's rise to power under Pep Guardiola and the beautiful tiki-taka football they played. There's no getting away from it. It was beautiful. It was a joy to watch. It's been great. Its effect on the game. But they started hearing that they'd always been like this. It was a kind of organic thing. La Masia was beating all these pure Catalan footballers representing I mean, Messi was there. They got him for Argentina and pumped him full of plastic when he was like 12 years old. The growth hormones, and Ibrahimovic and all these guys. There's always lots of foreign players, never mind non-Catalan players, and the clauses in their contract, you have to buy them for 100 million. There was nothing organic or pure about it, but it was definitely nice. It was definitely a great thing they were doing. It was definitely worth taking note of, and the football was lovely. And I think we're starting to get the same thing with Spain now. There's a deification of the Spanish, and you're getting complete demonisation of Argentina, and there's a deification of the Spanish going on, and neither's completely right. Spain, even in this World Cup, what they were getting up to in the latter stages of the semi-final against France, little bits of diving, rolling about and all that gamesmanship, it's still in them, but they used to be horrifically brutal. Almost comically so. They were kind of pantomime villains, but they could not get past like quarterfinals in the Spanish either. So they beat Denmark in the semi-finals of Euro 84, and I'm sitting at my grand's watching this final, and it's your grand's birthday, and you're watching the Fitbit on the telly. It's all right, because my dad and all my uncles were sitting watching it with me. It was fine. Everybody was doing this. It's just what we did. But I can't even remember what age my grand was. Her birthday must be around about June. I need to go and look that up. But it was great, and watching it wasn't a great game, but France won 2-0, lucky goal from Platina, that goes under Arcanada, bad time for a mistake from him, but that was like mind-blowing. France have won something, and Spain have got to a final. That's quite a thing. And now, we're sat there and these guys run the world. They are the best 2 teams out there. It's phenomenal, but what they did was they stuck with it. I'm growing up in an age, the first World Cup I remember was 1978. Argentina won that when I was like 8 coming on 9. Then when I'm 16 coming on 17, Argentina win it again in 86. When I'm 20, nearly 21, they win it. Now they get to the final, they lose bitterly and narrowly to Germany in Rome in the Italia 90 final. And don't get me wrong, there's a massive hiatus. But then they've won the 2 Copa Americas and a World Cup after losing Copa America final, World Cup final, Copa America final with Messi a decade ago, and now they're back and they've won the World. And Argentina, Spain might be the only country to have won the World Cup twice this century. France have been the World Cup final twice this century. All the heavy hitters, Brazil, Germany, Italy, the historic, they've all had their World Cup win in the 21st century, but Argentina are the only team to have reached the World Cup final 3 times in the 21st century. They're the team of my life, whether I like it or not. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And the Germans and the Brazilians, and I mean, I adore the Germans. At the very time I was growing up, Germany were dominant. One of the first tournaments, second tournament I remember is Euro 1980, and they win that. Then they're in the 82 World Cup final, the 86 World Cup final. They win it in 1990. I was there when they beat the Czechs in the final of Euro 96. I was at the semi-final and the quarter-final as well at Old Trafford against Croatia. But that's a different thing. That's a personal thing, because I loved the Germans. They became my kind of philosophy. I mean, Scotland's my love, my actual love, but the admiration I had. They were my way of life. When you're getting beat, don't panic. When you're winning, don't get ahead of yourself. Plus, everybody hates you. That's me. That's my life. That's a Rangers supporter as well, you know. Everybody hates you. Don't worry about it. Just get on with it. And they dominated. And then, but Euro 2000, right downhill. But they rebuilt and they get back and they've won the World Cup in 2014. They got back to the final of the Euros in 2008. But then they've become kind of useful idiots. Japan and Mexico having great moments against them in the 2018 World Cup, and it's almost like England beating them on the way to the final of Euro 2020. It was a major moment for the English at Wembley, for their psyche, and trying to get back to a glory that they've only had once before. And in Brazil, I was growing up, they'd won in 1970 World Cup, their greatest performance ever. I was only one at the time, not even one. At the time they won that, so I grew up with Brazil constantly failing to get to the World Cup final, and then when they won it in 1994, and I was 24, it was amazing. It was mind blowing, even though it was a bit of a shit final. The penalties and what have you, but Brazil were world champions again. Then they won it they blew it in '98. They won it in 2002, and I was kind of done with them after that. It was getting a bit pretentious. I was getting sick of their pattern, their posturing, and they're now just the 7-1 thrashing in the semi-final back on home soil in 2014. I quite enjoy watching Brazil getting eliminated now. They're kind of, Germany and Brazil, even though they're still the two superpowers, really, you would say, in international football, historically, they're kind of, at times fluctuating, at times it's corresponding perfectly, their little graph of collapse, rise again, collapse, rise again. It's quite entertaining to watch, but Argentina and Spain are so consistent. It is absolutely unbelievable. And the French, I don't know what they did. Well, they Clairefontainers, they definitely they had a deliberate attack on improving the international team, and they won that World Cup in 1998. So Kylian Mbappe gets raised in a world where Spain won the Euros, France won the Euros in 2000. He'll be like 7, 8 when they're in the 2006 World Cup final, so that's probably going to be one of his earliest memories. He's just, France are just a World Cup final, Euros final kind of team. And then he just steps into that, and he's scoring in the World Cup final for France. You've just got to push yourself over the edge, get to that point where it becomes normalised. That can bring its own pressure. You're expected to win tournaments. But you see what happened with Argentina in a different sort of way. So we don't know what happened with Spain. Is it because you've got these great regional clubs and they're able to go in and do the business, and that kind of helps, that ameliorates the distaste Madrid has for them and the distaste they have for Madrid? I don't know, but it's definitely spectacular, their rise, and they're the greatest team in the world, no doubt about it, of the 21st century. But Argentina with Messi, you saw some VT, I don't know if it was on ITV or BBC the other night before the final, Argentina fans, where Messi loses the World Cup final, in between twice losing to Chile in the final of the Copa America. This is 2014, and either side of 2014, that World Cup final. And he's not even 30 years old, and he retires because the Argentinian fans hate him. Some of them hate him. There was it was showing me footage of them being interviewed at the time. He's cheating as he's doing as the Catalan, he tries for Barcelona. And it's 2021 that Messi leaves Barcelona, who are a country. I mean, Barcelona are their own nation. That's Messi and club. A bit like Rangers, a bit like Celtic, that kind of thing. It's dangerous to have that in Scotland, but the point's been made over there. They go and he leaves, but having won, 10, 12 La Ligas, 3 Champions Leagues. He's done the business. He's taken Barcelona on the approach, attacking what Real Madrid have done in Europe, but certainly dominating them domestically. And he goes to PSG. It's not retirement, but it's getting there. And he's at Inter Miami. Him and Rodrigo de Paul were at Inter Miami, and they're fucking fighting tooth and nail in a World Cup final. It's like he's had 2 different careers. Barcelona, playing for that nation. He's got Spanish and Argentinian citizenship. And of course, he couldn't play for the Catalan national team like Pep Guardiola could. And those little kind of symbolic ceremonial internationals that you have for the various regions. You've got the Basque representative side as well, probably other ones, Galicia, I don't know. But definitely the Basque region and Catalonia have their own little national teams who will play like Palestine or something in various internationals, unofficial internationals, matter of great pride for them. But Messi does the Barcelona thing to death almost, then he leaves and he starts doing the Argentina thing. He packed it in, and a lot of Argentina fans want him to pack it in. And look at him now. Look at what happens. He's won 2 Copa Americas, and he's won the World Cup, and he's back in another World Cup final. I was happy when Paredes gets sent off after the final whistle, but it beautifully completed the Maradona thing, the Maradona comparison for Messi. He's done exactly, not only has he now done infinitely more than Maradona ever did, but he has, for Argentina, that ever achieved. But what he did achieve, he's even managing to reprise it. Little aspects of it, or the major aspect for Maradona was he led Argentina almost single-handedly to winning very excitingly that World Cup in 1986 in Mexico, where they win the final 3-2 against the Germans with a late winner, and the Germans having coming back to 2 each. Maradona's the captain, what have you. And Messi does the same in 2022 against France and Qatar. They come back to 3 each. France, it goes to extra, it ends up 3 each. But France come back for 2 goals down, and they equal. It goes to extra time, and Argentina score 3 goals. They do it in penalties. It's every bit as exciting, every bit the best one, probably the best game I've ever watched on telly. And then Maradona in 1990, a worse Argentina team, gets into the World Cup final. They get totally outplayed by the Germans. They're not even trying to win the game as much as take it to extra time and penalties, and when they lose, it becomes obvious they're not going to win the game. Gustavo Dazzotti and Pedro Monzon become the first guys ever to be sent off in the World Cup final. The 2 Argentinians lose their shit. And this Messi is dragging an Argentina team who aren't quite as good. The draw has been a bit more favourable to them in this World Cup. It's sheer experience, willpower, and whatever skill they've got, maximising whatever skills they've got, and they've got plenty more skill than anybody's ever had. And Messi, they get to a second successive World Cup final, and they're never going to win it, and they lose it by a goal to 0, and they lose their shit. And eventually, it's 2 guys sent off again. There's only 6 guys ever sent off in a World Cup final now. 4 of them are 7. Sorry, 4 of them are Argentinian. That's that's part of their reputation. But he's done the exact same as Maradona, but also add to that, Messi dragged Argentina single-handedly to the 2014 World Cup final. And they lost that to the Germans after extra time. But through the 2, Maradona never won the Copa America. Argentina hadn't done anything since winning the 86 World Cup. And Messi got them so close that they get angry with him, and he got angry with himself. Let's just rip this up. I think England did the same thing with Gareth Southgate. Almost because he got them closer and more consistently closer than anybody other than Alf Ramsey, having won that. And Alf Ramsey only got England to 1 major final, and he won it. And it's the most major final. But Gareth Southgate is getting them 3rd in the Nations League, 4th in the World Cup, 2 losing finals of the Euro. The final been lost twice in the Euros, once on penalties. Goes out in the quarter-final of the World Cup, but the next World Cup he's at, but it's just got them so close, and he became hated. He became almost kind of despised. Southgate, they're throwing stuff at him during these World Cups. And now they're starting to do the same again with Thomas Tuchel. Same with Scotland, in our much reduced circumstance. Stick with it. I think we should get Steve Clarke back. It's to the point that the greatest moment you've had in the furthest you've ever went is the first round of a World Cup. That's the furthest Scotland have ever gone. So Steve Clarke has got us back there for the first time in 28 years. And we did win a game, first win at a World Cup finals in 36 years. And it's just not get rid of him. The football's not good enough. What are you talking about? Who cares what the football's like? We've got the person who's getting us there. But I think we should learn our lesson from what Spain, France, and particularly Argentina have done to get themselves back to this point. It was a goal fest, I say, on Saturday in Miami. I couldn't even begin describing all the goals, but well done to Anthony Barry, the coach who has to do these flash interviews that are now compulsory, thanks to Gianni Infantino. At half-time, he's doing the half-time one during that England-France game, and the whole BBC, I watched the BBC, the whole editorial line was clearly go with the lowest common denominator feeling, go with the tabloid thing, and there's no better person than Kelly Summers to interview him. It's all about how we can't forgive Tuchel for fucking up against Argentina, despite, as many people have been saying since then, if he'd offered England, they would only lose by a single goal to Argentina in the World Cup semi-final. They would probably take that, probably see that as being a good a good performance, just the way it went. People can't cope with the reality. The reality of what it goes, it kind of confuses people. And it's like we kind of take the fact that we're losing a match that would have been really great to win. That's what football's all about at the highest level. You're getting closer. So the idea was we have to slag this off. And Danny Murphy's got interviewed on the pitch before the game, who's the pundit, and he's saying, no, as far as I'm concerned, winning this game, it would barely be a consolation. By the end of that game, Danny Murphy is, oh my God, can it not be time up? Can it not be time up? Because you're getting a taste for something you've never experienced before. It's okay picturing something, but until you're there, this idea that we don't want to win a game is disgusting in itself. The third place match means nothing. Tell that to Turkey and South Korea. Tell that to the Moroccans did write it off as a game when they played in it last year. But the fella that scored the winning goal for Croatia in the bronze medal match at last World Cup said it's the most important goal of his career. To go to a World Cup, it's an insult to everybody else in that tournament for you to say that you don't want the bronze medal match. And there was, I can't remember her name. Damn, I tried to as well at the time. She was on the BBC, I think it was 5 Live. I was listening to a podcast discussing the World Cup, and she said she played when England got to the World Cup bronze medal match. England's women's team got to the bronze medal match, and they played the Germans. And she think that the experience they got getting to that match, just the experience itself, is what led to them winning 2 successive Euros. Women's team, it certainly fed into that. They were right up for it, and they wanted the pride of that. Lucy Bronze playing in the bronze medal match. But it was, I think it was disgusting to write that game off. And when England are 4-0 up at half time, it's tremendous. Bukayo Saka then becomes the second England player to have scored a post semi-final hat-trick. Him and Jeff Hurst. You've already got Kylian Mbappe. That's one of his other honours, is to have scored a hat-trick. It's only him and Jeff Hurst have scored a hat-trick in the World Cup final, and now you've got Bukayo Saka has scored a hat-trick after the semi-finals of the World Cup. It is a final, the bronze medal match. It's nothing like the weight of the main one, but it's far from just a ceremonial game. That's a great thing for him after not being picked in this World Cup very often, and the racist abuse he took after missing a penalty in the Euro 2020 final for England. And the final, getting abused because you lose the final when England have never been in the Euros final before at that point. Unreal. So it's fantastic to see that. But Anthony Barry with a 4-0 up at half-time, England, and Kelly Summers, the question she asks is, it's not even a question, she just basically says, the only thing you can say about that, Anthony, is it's a pity it's come too late. Or it's a pity it didn't happen the other night against Argentina. I don't know exactly she phrased it. But it wasn't a question, just an insult. It's like what you've just done there, 4-0 up against France, arguably the second greatest team in the world right now, is shit. Doesn't count. Doesn't mean, in fact, it's an insult, because why can you do that the other night? She said, completely not understanding football. She does, but it's just trying to create division, trying to make fans hate their own national team, whether at a point where you can, on the cusp of actual glory. And fair play to him, he said, I'm nearly in tears here. Now I normally balk when anybody starts saying, I'm in pieces here, I'm feeling really tearful. When you've got to say, I am emotional, you're thinking, you want to be. But he was quite right. He said, I'm nearly in tears here, but just seeing these guys, what they've been through. And England's programme, and they're talking about this on 5 Live, the travelling they had to do, and going to the Azteca and playing with 10 men in the Azteca. That's no Mexico's fault. It's not the World Cup's fault. England got a guy sent off. These things happen. Although they struggled against opposition that they perhaps shouldn't struggle against, England just don't. This is only the second time they've ever reached a semi-final. The third time they've reached a semi-final on foreign soil. And it's the first time they've reached a semi-final of a World Cup outside of Europe. And they've been all over Mexico and all over the States and playing in different temperatures and having sometimes more time and less time sometimes between different games. It's a hell of a thing what England have been through. And see Anthony Barry just saying they're 4-0 up in this game. They're basically getting slagged from pillar to post despite being exhausted, despite having given it absolutely everything. And say, I'm in the camp and I'm experiencing the unity and the drive and the determination of these guys. And you think of Declan Rice scoring one of those goals, scoring the first goal in that game after a few minutes against the French. He's been run into the ground by Arsenal this season. He's played in the Champions League final, which went to extra time and penalties, as well as dragging Arsenal to their first title in the best part of a quarter of a century. the stuff psychologically as well as physically these guys have been through. We know the British season's far too brutal, far too long, as is a European club season. I know it's the same for the other players in the semi-final, but for other teams, but my God, what they've been through. And I thought it was great. The guy comes out there and he just says, I'm just so proud of them. I can't believe what they've done. That's amazing. And she's kind of like, all right, I was wanting to be negative about it. And then they go out and they lose 3 straight goals to the French, who've unbelievable stat that Didier Deschamps, his first game playing for the men's national team for France was a 2-0 loss to England at Wembley. Shearer and Lineker, the rest is football, scoring the 2 goals for England that night. The only time they were both on the same score sheet, as Steve Wilson was telling us in commentary for the BBC. And in his last game as France manager, his last game that involved with the French men's senior team, is losing to England, again, by 2 clear goals. And England have got a great record against France in the World Cup. Losing, and it's the greatest finish, the best finish for England. It's as a coincidence for Deschamps, and what a guy, and all the best to him in his retirement. But England beat France in the 1966 World Cup in the group stage. Nobby Stiles broke a guy's leg, and I think it was 2-0. And then they've beaten France here to have their best finish since the 66 World Cup. And by the end of that game, they say Steve Wilson and Danny Murphy, who'd been slagging it off because they felt they should, doesn't mean anything. And they're Englishmen, they probably were actually genuinely down on it. We should be in the final, we should be in the final. They were they didn't want to lose that game. And a fantastic moment from Jude Bellingham, one of the stars of the tournament, genuinely world-class player, when he hands the ball to Saka to take that penalty to get his hat-trick. When Bellingham was being brought onto the park. No, Harry Kane's on the bench and all that. It's a really refreshed England team. And then Bellingham, the goal he scores to seal it at 6-4 that's, if you don't want to watch the third, fourth place game, that's up to you, but you're missing stuff like that. A guy just running the full length of the pitch and then dribbling past everybody in the box and deciding what exact postage stamp sized part of the net he wants to place the ball into. It was brilliant. And you've got the French team coming with Dembele, Barcola is coming alive along with Mbappe getting his 2 goals straight away. And then you've seen somebody scoring 10 goals at World Cup for only the 4th time ever. Steve Wilson was making mistakes. He seemed to have a brain fart, a gap in his mind about Gerd Muller. Gerd Muller, he scored 10 goals at the 74 World Cup. He scored most of his goals at the 74 World Cup. He only scored only 4 goals at the 74 World Cup finals, Gerd Muller. One of them was a winner in the final, that's fair enough. But he scored 10 at Mexico 70. He said, this is the most anybody scored at World Cup since Eusebio get 9 at England 66. Well, Gerd Muller get 10 at the following World Cup. You have to get 9 before you can get 10. What's he It's because the 10th one was against England in the quarter-final, and Leon is really bitter about that. I don't know. I think he's just a bit of a brain fart, and I know what that is like, so total sympathy to him. But yeah, I thought England finished really well, and the fact that they get that bronze, they think they're going to get it taken off them. You know, it's Andy Murray. It's Andy Murray with his 2012 Olympics title. He's lost the Wimbledon final to Federer. He lost another final. I think he'd lost another major final by that point. Maybe not. I'm not a great tennis fan, but I'm very up for Scottish people doing well in sport. And Andy Murray loses the Wimbledon final to Federer, but then the Olympics that summer are in London, and they have an Olympic tennis tournament, and it's only 2 sets this final, and it's all Olympic bunting and all that, and livery around, but it's the All England Club. It's Wimbledon. It's played at Centre Court, Wimbledon, the final, and it's Federer that he beats. So it's not the real thing, but it's fucking as good. It's as good a representation. It's as close as you can get without it being the real thing. It's not a real Grand Slam tournament. It's not a proper major, as they call it in golf, but it's got all the kind of livery, all the bunting of one of them, all the makings. It looks like the real thing. And he does the business, and that then he wins Wimbledon for real. The following year, he wins the US Open as well. I think later on that year, or early in 2013. This is what it is for England. It's not the World Cup final, but it's a World Cup final, and they've won it, and it's the best they've done since '66. And they need to. Tuchel's just in the door. He's learnt a bit about England. He's talked about what he wants to do. Yeah. Let's give the guy another chance. Definitely give the guy another chance as far as I'm concerned. And then we get this World Cup final. It's 2 teams who couldn't beat Cape Verde over 90 minutes. You know, but it's Dani Olmo. he really makes Spain tick. You know, you'll notice Rodri, or you'll not really notice Rodri that much either, but Dani Olmo, he's the guy who's these little magical moments playing that kind of 10 position for Spain. And then Messi, of course, he's the maestro for Argentina. That's Dani Olmo and Lionel Messi, two guys who couldn't win in Europe at Ibrox. Why am I watching this game? It seems like a complete letdown, you know? And then you've got Tom Cruise on a box. I mean, why is Tom Cruise on a box? Everybody thinks about Tom Cruise standing in a box because he's so short. And then, I know Jennifer Hudson had been on the same box singing the American National Anthem before that. But Tom Cruise is out standing in a box. This is very surreal. And then they're goading, they're trolling the Dutch. What have the Dutch done right? What have the Dutch done right? They've lost 3 World Cup finals. The Dutch went to Mario Kempis, Argentina. This Mario Kempis out on the pitch at the beginning of the game, showing the World Cup after all the Argentina fans. And they've lost one to the Dutch. Iniesta scored this Iniesta to the Spanish. This Iniesta. Oh, this is the World Cup. I won this when I scored the winner against the Dutch. The Dutch folk, they've just got home. They've just managed to get over the fact they went out in penalties, or they get beat by Morocco in this World Cup. They're just getting over it, and they're just sitting down to enjoy the World Cup final, and they're getting totally trolled. It's absolutely out of order. And I must admit, I was half of me. It's a World Cup final. You have to watch it. It's great. It's very exciting in itself. But I was also just glad it was all over. After this, I'm going to be free. I'm going to be free. I would only watch 38 of the 92 games it was possible to watch live, but I recorded the rest and was watching them. And so I don't know what you did, but I missed 5 of the 16 last 32 games. I missed, I think, 1 of the 8 last 16 games. I saw all the quarterfinals. I watched all the quarterfinals, and I watched all the semi-finals and the 2 finals, if you like. But the group stages, I was going through it all the other day, and you remember when you watch a game, I remember watching them. And there was one group, and it was the group featuring the Dutch, which was a total goal fest of a group. Japan, the Dutch, Tunisia, and Sweden. So many goals. So Sweden won a game 5-1 and lost a game 5-1 to the Dutch and against Tunisia. I think that's the goal. And I saw highlights, and I was watching the recordings, fast forwarding through them. I didn't watch a single live game from that group. That's never happened to me before. There's always at least one game in a group that I've watched, but there were some groups I was just watching one game, other ones I wasn't watching it. The thing that got me was it got to a point where I was trying to write off this World Cup. Because so much of it I was just going to watch the knockout stages, really. But I watched like the opening game, South Africa against Mexico, and I watched something else. And at one, I just remember it was the USA's first game against Paraguay, which I'm glad I didn't miss because the USA were sensational and made a real announcement in this World Cup. I thought they were going to go much further until Trump screwed it for them. But I was lying in bed and I knew their game was on at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. They, being my age and my weight, I just need to walk to the fridge and back, and I'm knackered, so I get to sleep quite easily. But this suddenly I'm lying in bed and I can't get to sleep. And it's like, you're fucking 9-year-old, 10-year-old again. Like, you know there's a World Cup game on live that you could be watching, and you can't get to sleep. And so I did this a couple of times, and it was a USA against Paraguay, and also the USA's game in the knockout stages against Bosnia, the one that created all the controversy where Balogun gets sent off. But I watched the 2 of them on my phone. There's a set of headphones running about somewhere in that bedroom as well, but I lay in my bed with it turned down completely, watching it on the Matchbox size screen in bed, these 2 games. And then England against Mexico was on holiday at that point, and it kept getting put back into the early hours in the morning. And probably because we weren't having to be anywhere the next day, we were actually in England, and I sat and I watched that. I had my headphones on for that one, and that was a captivating game. It was a tremendous game as well. But there was a few that I was getting to the point I couldn't sleep because I knew games were on. So I'd wake up even more knackered, but not having watched the game. You know, something like after the Scotland game against Morocco, I just stayed up and I watched the 2 games. I did a post-match reaction pod, and I was watching all of Turkey against Paraguay. It was a great game as well. Just Paraguay down to 10 men after the first kind of hand over the mouth, sending off. They'd already scored the goal even earlier than the goal Morocco had scored against Scotland. It's captive. I'm sitting watching that till like 6. It's daylight. You're going to your bed. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It was a Friday into a Saturday, so it was fine. But yeah, it's absolutely debilitating. But here we were, World Cup final, and yeah, it wasn't much of a game, I say, front of the brain. If you just like your goals, well, you would have loved the game the night before. England against France. Plus, that was the thing, I need to repeat the mistakes I was making the other day. England against France, sorry. 6-4 to England. Incredible game. 10 goals. And I know that the most goals ever scored in a World Cup match still remains 12 for the famous Switzerland against Austria quarter-final at Switzerland, the Switzerland World Cup in 1954, where the Swiss had scored 4 goals by half-time, 5 goals by the hour mark, and still lost the game 7-5. It's quite a bit of a bug on that one. They're destined never to get past a quarter-final, the Swiss. But they, except in the Nations League, sorry, first ever Nations League. That's the other thing. Spain. Portugal, the only team to have won. There have been 4 Nations Leagues so far in Europe. And Spain, Portugal have won 2 of them. The only team to have won it twice, but Spain are the only team to be in the final 3 times. So they're just dominating absolutely everything. And I was talking the other night wrongly. It was Hungary beat El Salvador, thanks David, 10-1 at Spain 82. That was 11 goals. And then Yugoslavia beating the old Zaire, as they're called, in DR Congo 9-0 at the 1974 World Cup in Scotland's group. Scotland only beat them 2-0. Brazil only beat them 3-0, but that's what put Brazil through instead of us from that 74 World Cup group. So there's been the idea that this World Cup was a joke because there was so many nations in it. There's 48 teams. We had Curaçao getting beat 7-1 by the Germans, but they then draw the next game with Ecuador, and there's been far tougher leatherings handed out than Curaçao took off the Germans, including the Germans beating Brazil by 7-1 in the 2014 semi-final. So that never came to pass, but it was an amazing game to watch. But we got 1-0 in the final, the 23rd World Cup final. I found it was an intoxicating game. It was fascinating to watch. Spain are just unbelievable. It was Tim Vickery, and I think his podcast, or when he was talking to, I can't remember, he's probably mentioned it a few times, but he talked about the moment in the semi-final, and I went back and I watched this, 'cause I've still got the semi-final recorded, Spain against France. It's the 15th minute, and it's spot on. France have this breakaway in the 15th, they catch Spain on the hop, as far as anybody can, and Mbappe's basically played through on goal. And you know how that usually goes. And Mbappe's electric. Elise, the boss, he plays through to him as well. Electric. And Spain just snuff it out within seconds. And that kind of sums up what Spain do well, as opposed to, there's a kind of magical monotony to what Spain do. To the naked eye, perhaps, to somebody who's not watched more football and it's healthy for them, likes myself. But Tim Vickery talked at that moment, he said that's what summed up Spain. That sums up what they do. You just can't get it. When you do get the ball off them, it's even more impressive than when they've got the ball, and it is. I rewound it and I watched it, and it's what led to and they scored 4 minutes later. They get the penalty 4 minutes later from the same thing. It's Cucurella going down that left hand side. Cucurella going down the left hand side, and he plays the ball over, and it gets cut out. Upamecano or something like that. It's a really impressive cut out from a brilliant France defence. But the ball goes. It's only about 10 yards outside the box to Elise, who's got his back to goal. And he just plays it one time, lovely flick round the corner, and it's to Dembele, and he goes away with the ball. He gets to the halfway line, and he plays an absolute killer pass round the back of that defence, back of that Spain defence, to Mbappe, who times his run to perfection, and he's basically clean through. But he's outside the box, and Spain just snuff them out. They just suck the whole life out of everything the opposition do. And this is France. I would love to have seen what France did to Argentina. I think it would have blasted them away, Argentina, with the French. The Spanish style, I think, suited Argentina and England. But the French style, Spain were the team that was going to be able to snuff that out, and they did. And it's no spectacular shoot. It's like, Dembele gets pushed a bit wide, and then he kind of plays the ball across. France keep the ball for a wee bit outside the Spanish box, but by that time it seems like there's about 25 Spain players inside the box. You're not going anywhere with that. You just give us it back. And that's what happens. And 4 minutes later in that game, they get the penalty. Yamal gets brought down for the penalty because Cucurella goes down the left-hand side and he puts a better ball over. It gets deflected a different way. It's just persistence. They just keep going. And it's 1-0, and then the game's over in the second half. Early on in the second half, Pedro Porro gets the second goal for Spain in that game. But into the final, and Argentina kick off, and within 10 seconds, 15 seconds, Spain have got the ball back. It's just like, no, we'll have that. We'll get that. And then the game seems to get slowed down because Spain will start playing the ball about the front of their own box. But it's like, you had kick off, but can you just get to us? That line they used to have the great Dutch commentators used to say about the Ajax team of the mid-90s. They'd say Ajax, the team with the ball, instead of the team in the white strip with the red strip. The team with the ball, and that's what Spain are like. There's the team with the ball, but when you have the ball, they snuff it out. And there's a moment early on, about 5 minutes into that game, where Spain make an arse of it, and Aymeric Laporte is kind of getting caught out at the back. He can't quite get onto the ball, and it's Julian Alvarez, and he plays a lovely ball through to Messi. But Spain, Argentina are in their own half, basically, so it's a breakaway with Messi. First time ball, fantastic. No, he takes a touch on Alvarez and he plays the ball through to Messi. Unai Simon, their goalkeeper, and I will call him Unai Emery at some point, it's guaranteed, but Unai Simon, their goalkeeper, is out there. Athletic Bilbao goalkeeper, he's up there, like, must be 20 yards outside his own box, and he beats Messi to the ball. It's the whole team is just tactically absolutely on it, and when it comes to losing possession, doesn't matter if it's you're taking kick-off or we've made a rick and you've played one of your strikers through on our goal. We'll have that ball back, please. It's phenomenal. There's not a lot of great chances created, but that's in Spain. Argentina didn't record a single shot on goal during that game. But the way Argentina played, they could still have won the game. They could still have taken it to penalties. Giovanni Simeone Jr., he loses his marker, he loses his man, he loses Ferran Torres in the box for the only goal of the game, and then just to complete England's revenge on the Simeone family, maybe, they probably got that in the 2002 World Cup match where they met up in Japan, and Beckham scores a penalty. He misses from... It's at the edge of the box, isn't it? Is it a bit, I don't know, maybe 12 yards out or something like that? He just blasts it over the bar, and it was the best chance Argentina really had in the whole game. And I think it's about 3 minutes from the end of injury time, the end of extra time, and you can see that by that point in time, they're down to 10 men, Argentina. They've been down to 10 men for the whole of extra time, and yet they still, a very believable, very possible way that they would have equalised and taken this game to penalties and won the bloody thing. So I can't really blame Argentina for the way they go about things. I will, but all credit to them. They nearly got the job done. The way that I think this is the only way anybody could do the job, was to nick it at the end and win the thing on penalties against this Spain team. Because the one thing is, this Spain team can't score a lot of goals. They don't score a lot of goals. They don't have an out-and-out amazing finisher like England have got with perhaps in Harry Kane or like Mbappe, but different teams, different style. They do okay. And that was really it. That Argentina had that wee chance, and that's kind of it for the whole game. Spain are just passing them to death, and Argentina's, I think, is about, 10 minutes, quarter of an hour into the game when McAllister goes in on somebody. Is it Fabian Ruiz? I don't know. He fouls somebody in midfield, and that's the first of Argentina deciding, we can't get the ball off this mob. Let's just start kicking them. The reason we've signed Cammy Devlin and Lauren Shankland at Rangers, if you can't get the ball, just go and put the boot in and make things happen. Argentina are trying that, and they couldn't even make that happen. Even that wasn't working. So they get increasingly frustrated as the game went on. Was there really any chance? It's a few days ago now, this game, but the chances weren't very memorable. There wasn't very many created. It gets towards the end of the game, and Argentina, absolute craziness from Fernandez, who won the Club World Championship here with Chelsea a year before, and had won the previous World Cup final, obviously, but he won the Club World Championship a year and 6 days previously in the very same stadium with Chelsea. And you had Fabian Ruiz, who had lost that final with PSG, Chelsea beating PSG 3-0, so he's turning it the other way. But then you get Cucurella, who is the only guy to have won, he thinks, they won the World Club Championship and the World Cup on the same stadium, and it's on the same pitch in the MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, and within like a year, basically, just 6 days over a year. But then that halftime show, it's Ronaldo, it's Fat Ronaldo, it's Luis Nazario de Lima, R9, the phenomenon. He did it at Yokohama. He scored in the World Cup final and then scored in the Intercontinental Cup final, the World Club Championship final as it was then. He scores the Intercontinental Cup final. And for Real Madrid, a few months later, in the same pitch, the same stadium, while winning both those trophies in the space of, 6 months. So he just beats everybody. He's got Madonna in the back of the buggy. He just beats everybody. Does Ronaldo, even though Brazil haven't won it for years. So it was fantastic for Cucurella, a fantastic achievement for him. But Fernandes gets himself sent off through sheer frustration. He spins Pau Cubarsí about 3 times around his own axis with this tackle right at the end of the game. You're thinking, that is the one thing Argentina, you expect him to be cynical, you expect him to be dirty, but there's usually a point to it. With that, there was no point to it. It's suicidal. So Argentina go into extra time with 10 men. You're thinking they're going to get just played to death. It doesn't happen. They have the ball in the back of the net right at the start of extra time, and big Otamendi seems to jump up, and he's an absolute bruiser. He's come on as a sub. An absolute bruiser. He jumps up in the air because I think is it Marino or Ayarzabal has stood on his foot. And there was definitely, he does stand on his kind of toes at the end of his boots when you see the slow-mo replay. Vincic, the referee who refereed Rangers in the 2022 Europa League final, and then Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan, he's out there straight away. He's like, I think it's before the ball even goes in the back of the net, he's blown for that foul. So that's fair enough, but Nico Williams puts the ball in the back of the net for Spain. It's disallowed though, but I feel as if it was very soft. And then it was 116 minutes in Soccer City in Johannesburg, where Iniesta on the far side, it was on the left hand side as you're watching it on your TV screens, the left hand side goal, and he's about, probably 8 yards out in the far side of the box, the top of the 6-yard box, when he puts it in with his right foot. That's Ferran Torres, a current Barcelona player. It's the 106th minute, just right at the start of the second half of extra time. And say you can see that Simeone Jr. he's let Torres go because he's picked up a bit of an injury, Simeone Jr. So he's let his man go in the box, and it's absolutely fatal. They move the ball about, and Yamal gets involved. He has like the assist. I think he puts it back to Pedro Porro, who puts the ball over at the back post. And despite that's what everybody's joking about on the telly, this great football from Spain, this lovely possession football. It's a very English goal, a very British goal. Hit the big guy at the back post, and he out jumps Molina, who's wearing number 26 on his shorts on his back. In the 2026 World Cup final. He out jumps Molina of Argentina. Nico Williams, who we saw at Ibrox the season before last, in the Europa League quarter-final, he knocks the ball down, and in comes Ferran Torres with his left foot from about 8 yards. It takes a bounce inside the 6-yard box and bounces it to him, and so he meets it then first time, smashes it into the roof of the net, and he goes off into that same corner celebrating that Iniesta went down to celebrate in the 2010 final in Soccer City in Johannesburg. And Iniesta and the rest of the 2010 team are up in the stand. We've seen them in a celebrity-obsessed World Cup. With plenty of close-ups of them. They're going crazy. Sergio Ramos and that is up there as well. They're Carlos Puyol. They're celebrating like mad. And that's a beautiful thing. And in Spain are down in that corner celebrating this one. There was no Danny Jarque siempre con nosotros on that t-shirt under the jersey from Ferran Torres this time. But I don't think Iniesta kicked the corner flag. That's a terrible thing. But it was great to see passion, celebration befitting the goal in the biggest match in world football. One thing I'm going to say, just to be an old man complainer about this, and I know there was a lot of Argentina fans in the stadium. Argentina fans did really well throughout this World Cup, and the last few World Cups just dominating stadiums. They really are. They really are dedicated. They really do love their football. Insane country. But the lack of cheer for the goal. When you watch it back, I mean, at the time I'm watching it live, I'm too busy giving it, he scored, that's it. No, I'm talking over the top of it, but when I watch it back the next day, you're like, there's hardly any noise. There wasn't a lot of Spain fans there. The worst example of this was the 1998 World Cup final. France, as I say, who've invented all these tournaments, and I watched them Euro 84 final, beating Spain and lifting the Henri Deloney. It was a thrilling thing because I'd watched them in the 1982. I'd watched that 1982 semi-final against Germany in the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan in Sevilla, where Rangers played that 2022 Europa League final. I'd watched them beating France and watched France losing that game to the Germans. Patrick Battiston getting sent off. So, Patrick Battiston getting carried off in a stretcher with a broken fucking neck because Harold Schumacher had come out and put his arse through the guy's head when he was clean through on goal. It was one of the filthiest, one of the biggest scandals of all time. I mean, stuff that happened to this World Cup. You should see this. He's basically almost killed the guy and for some reason does not get sent off. It's seen as a legitimate challenge. And I loved the Germans. I was only 12 years old. But I love the Germans, and I love the fact they can stick there. And France are playing them off the park, but it goes to extra time. I ended up watching that game with my grands and one of my aunties, and then this is in Ardrossan where we all kind of stayed close to each other, and I watched the penalties in my own house, or I watched the extra time and the penalties in my own house. You know, I watched it in 3 different houses that game. It was an epic, and France are 3-1 up and cruising, and then Rummenigge comes on, and he's injured, but he still manages to score a goal, and they pull it back, and was it Klaus Fischer or Pierre Latbarski with the overhead header? Make it 3 each anyway, and it goes to penalties, and the Germans, despite Uli Stielicke missing his, they win on penalties. And when France then win, and their manager calls it the return ticket to Seville, the return from Seville when they win Euro 84, they then go to the next World Cup and they're great, and they meet a worse Germany team. They meet them in the semi-final in Mexico again. They're thinking, here we go, this is it. We are going to get rid of this. This is, you know, we're finally going to get proper revenge. And the Germans win this 1-2-0, and it's even easier for them than it was in 1982 in Seville. And you thought France are never going to recover. They're never going to do this, but they go out and they win that. They're never going to win a major. They're never going to win the World Cup. They won the Euros by that point in time. They'll never get past the Germans. They'll never. But yeah, if you stick in there, if you hang in there, and they did. But when France won that World Cup in 1998, it's in Paris. It's the first time they've ever won the tournament they invented, and the cheers, the roars for the 3 goals. They're beating Brazil as well. They were minimal. They were. It was. No, I mean, I don't know what you could compare it to. It's not even like like Aberdeen's Lewis Ferguson scores in the League Cup semi-final for Aberdeen against Rangers. That was a bigger roar, and they've got a tiny kind of Sunday night support done with them, Aberdeen. And that was a bigger roar than what you heard from the France support on it, because there's about 10,000 actual football fans who actually mean something to, who have been following the progress of this France team, who know the whole history of the France. It matters to them. There's about 10,000 of them in the stadium. I don't know what's happened with Spain. Is it just I mean, what was the game where they beat? Was it Belgium? They beat in LA, and the Spanish crowd at that game was phenomenal. You know, because you get a lot of people who are Hispanic, and a lot of Spanish speakers in California, obviously. But it was that was great, but it didn't seem to have a great representation in the stadium. And I'm just going to one more thing. You suspect maybe is it because they're not seen as being truly representative of the whole country. I remember Spain winning the Olympics football tournament in 1992 in Barcelona, and there was like nearly 100,000 there at the Nou Camp watching that one. Quite an exciting game. I think it was Poland. But they won it late on that game. I remember being in the Nou Camp. I went there to watch Rangers, obviously, saw Messi scoring, what an honour. But I'd also been, like, I don't know how, a few years before, on holiday, beautiful city, Barcelona. I'd been there, I was there for a week with my wife, and just did the tour of the Nou Camp, no game on, and I just did the Nou Camp tour, which everybody does when they go to Barcelona, and the stadium's amazing, and this is long before they started these refurbishment works. I don't know if it's still there, right, but this room that I'm talking about. But you see the dressing rooms, the trophy room, unbelievable. You're in the stadium, up in the stand, on the pitch. It's fantastic. But the bit that got me, just to try and be contrary, be a hipster about it, as a Rangers supporter, we went to this little room, and I remember, we'll all remember as Rangers fans, if you're a Rangers fan watching this, Jock Stein, Celtic get to invade the pitch. And their fans invade the pitch when they beat Inter in the 67 European Cup final, because it's a celebration, it's a great moment. It's no Catenaccio has been defeated and Celtic are European champions. Wally Waddle's Rangers do the same thing at the Nou Camp, and it's a riot, and we get banned for a... We were fighting the Guardia Civil, we were fighting Franco's henchmen face to face, we were taking on... And it was Salazar's henchmen that were still in power in Portugal as well, Iberian Peninsula, but they didn't have a problem with the Celtic supporters. They just let them go on with it, you know. But just because it was in Catalonia, which the Guardia Civil representing Madrid had to keep down, had to subjugate. They saw even Rangers fans out there celebrating the new camp. They have to have a go at them, and we're fighting them. So what happens? And John Gregdall talked about this. He got taken to a little room somewhere in the bowels of the new camp, and basically, this is UEFA official just went, Glasgow Rangers, Cup Winners' Cup champions, here's your trophy, and fuck off and take your fans with you. Basically, he describes it was a bit like going to get your gyro. Going to get your gyro, which is a bit sad, but it's also part of our iconography, and I absolutely love it. We couldn't get the trophy out on the pitch, and it was in this room, and I often wonder, was it the room? And there's photographs, but you can't really see what's going on in the background, what's up on the walls. When I went on the tour of the new camp, there is this room, and I don't know if it's still there. There's extensive and very long refurbishments taking place in the new camp just now, where they have, you can't see the wall because it's all covered in framed photographs of all the Barcelona players who have played for Spain, who've represented Spain. And it's a beautiful thing because it's an acknowledgement of the fact, I think they're wearing the Spain kits. It's like, so we're not going to put this front and centre anywhere in the new camp because we are anti-Madrid. Notions of being Spanish, don't sit well with us. We eschew those notions. We are Catalan above anything else, but there is no getting away from the fact that in football terms, it is the ultimate honour for our homegrown players to play for Spain. They'll play for Catalonia in the new camp stages, games of the Catalan representative side, but to go to a World Cup and win it, and to win a World Cup, it's a Barcelona player, Ferran Torres, scoring that goal. It's Iniesta who's scored, another Barcelona player who scored their only other winner in a World Cup final. And I say vivid representatives of the great Basque sides scoring in the winner in the last Euros final for Spain under De La Fuente, who himself is from the Athletic Bilbao stable. Is this what's stopping it being such it's a magic moment for them? They're getting to prove that these clubs are proving that they're the best in the world. The players they're producing are amongst the best in the world. The guys who have won the Euros and have won the World Cup and have scored the goal in the final. What an honour. And there's some nutcase extremist Rangers fans with too much to prove who want to go the other way and have the Rangers there should be a Great Britain representative side. We don't want to acknowledge. It's because of the whole social media. It's binary. Everybody has to go to extremes. There's no subtlety. There's none. Everything's very literal. So, and the SNP coming in, then the referendum and all that, India referendum. It's anything Scottish becomes an attack on Britain, which is complete garbage. I'm Scottish to my core. I have no desire to leave the union. It's an economic union as much as anything else for me. I don't want to leave the European Union either. So but there's Rangers fans who would quite happily have us no Rangers players would be playing for Scotland. Don't want anything to do with it for that reason, for that kind of sordid political reason. And if they want to go and tell John Gregg and Ali McCoy that they're wasting their time with their Scotland careers, then good luck to them. But I'm immensely proud to have Rangers players. Any country they play for, I'm immensely proud. Rangers players are capped for whatever country they're playing for, but Rangers players playing for Scotland means the fucking world to me. It really does, and I love the fact that we've got, like the last game I went to last season was that friendly against Curaçao at Hampden. You get Finlay Curtis, and then Rangers signing Lauren Shanklin scoring 2 of the 4 goals Scotland scored that day. It means the world to me. It's brilliant, and I don't mean like I then hate Celtic players scoring for Scotland. I just want to see Scotland scoring. It just means a little bit extra. So it's like the Barcelona, Real Sociedad, Athletic Bilbao fans, they're taking that little bit extra and maybe not having the pride in Spain. I don't know, so it results in a situation where the Spanish goal isn't cheered that wildly in the stadium by the Spanish support. No, you wouldn't go to watch it if you felt that way. But it's weird. I feel as if it's more likely to be the case that, as usual, the more important a football match, the less chance of ordinary fans getting there. And Rangers and Celtic, they do that. Rangers fan or Celtic fan, Champions League matches, it's not happened to me, luckily, because I don't know how it would make me feel. It's one of the things you just kind of put to the back of your mind. But other supporters, season ticket holders, when the old firms start getting to the latter stages of particularly the Champions League, they get moved out their season ticket seats to make way for corporate types who've probably got into their second football match in their life. It's disgusting. I think there's a lot of that takes place with the World Cup final as well, and it's terrible. But Spain, they won that World Cup. They had the ball in the back of the net again. Ferran Torres put the ball, but it was offside. And then you had, I don't know if it was straight after, the one and only Nico Williams going through on goal again. He's already got an assist, and he basically has to square the ball, I think, to Torres in the middle, and he tries a kind of step over back heel type scenario that just goes completely wrong the way it does for all of us at fives, and out it goes for a by kick, and it's like, that could cost you, because even though they're down to 10 men, Argentina are always dangerous, particularly Messi on the pitch. There's a moment Argentina can only really muster an attack for the last 5 minutes or so. A little bit of pressure. Messi puts in a free kick or a cross anyway from the right hand side, which I think was supposed to be going to somebody at the back post, but it might actually been trying to put it into the top corner, because it nearly loops down into the top corner. So that's quite interesting. That's as close as Argentina came to scoring. Didn't happen. And you have that miss from Giovanni Van Simeone just over the bar, and it's all over. And Argentina do not take it well, because Spain are like celebrating. They're just celebrating, celebrating to win the World Cup. You're supposed to celebrate that. They're on the pitch, and what gets me about Argentina, I can't help it. It's an instinctive thing. If you dish it out, you should be able to take it. You know, if you dish it out, you should be able to, and they dish it out all the time. And one thing, I think I'd said, another snagging item in my last World Cup pod, that Argentina, fair play to them, after they won the semi-final in 2022 against the Dutch, they got right in their faces. So it's not just about losing a game, but it was a quarter-final, so they beat Croatia in the semi-final, so that was a snagging item. But the Argentina are basically poor winners and poor losers, and that's an overspill of the amounts of passion they put into it. But Paredes, and I think Pau Cubarsí, his actual surname, his last name is Paredes as well, interestingly enough, but Paredes is just grabbing guys and punching them, and total animal. He just wants to commit violence as much as possible. So do a few of the Argentina players. They're no ND running past them, celebrating, they're flicking out at them and all that. This isn't on the actual final whistle when this team have just won the World Cup. And Argentina themselves won the last World Cup. They should know what it's all about. It's disgusting stuff. It is anti-football in the truest sense. So Paredes ends up getting himself sent off. And that's a lovely coincidence. Argentina have twice lost the World Cup. As holders, they lost the following World Cup final and had two guys sent off. They lost it by 1-0 in 1990 and again in 2026. So it's good stuff. But you didn't have the Trump and Infantino. It's horrific stuff to watch. Trump, like he did in the Club World Championship final won by Chelsea, he doesn't want to leave the stage. It's like he's almost, you can think Infantino's having to say to him, he was struggling to he's got to put a medal on every second player. Infantino will give it, he'll put a medal on the other guy. That was too much for him. The whole world on social media, I did it as well and didn't realise everybody else had said the same thing. Shit yourself. Some people wanted Trump to shit himself when he was up in the box 10 minutes in, stroking the World Cup trophy, because he had to see it, I had to touch it. But I was in favour, I was part of the majority who wanted him to shit himself when he was on the podium. So it's like properly running down his suit and doing his trousers and coming out over his boots and all that. There's no getting away from it. No avoiding the fact that didn't happen. The man's horrendous. It's nothing against America. It's just he's absolute scum. He's a vile person, and he can't take himself off the stage. He can't take himself off the podium, and Spain are waiting to lift this World Cup. You know, Argentina, a few kind of refereeing decisions had gone their way, and you see Otamendi has managed to turn that into a reason to have a go at Rodri at the end of the game. Apparently he's saying to him, you guys have been complaining that we get all the refereeing decisions. You know, so that's making referees biased against us. It's like they can't win with these guys. And Rodri's going, I didn't say this, I didn't do this, but that's something, well, get it up you, Rodri, because that's what you were doing with Scotland when we beat you. You were telling us we played pish fit, but he can't take it either. Big Nicolas Otamendi. But there was a Spain as a country don't like Trump. They've made it plain. Whereas Argentina have got a nutcase right-wing Nazi bastard in charge. So there was a kind of idea that perhaps Trump had got involved in some way to make sure, because he did the same thing with the USA, with Balogun's red card, getting that rescinded. Had he done the same thing with all the referees refereeing the Argentina games to make sure they were getting the benefits of all the decisions? I think it's just Argentina are so aggressive, so in your face, and in the heat of the moment, and heat being the operative word, I think it's just it's street smarts. They're harassing referees. They're working them during the games. It's just what they're doing on the pitch at the time that maybe gets them these decisions and makes officials scared to give decisions against them. They have to be reined in. They really do. But as far as you're concerned, and as far as I'm concerned as well, in a lot of ways, it's part of their passion. There's no getting away from Argentina. Are utterly engaged. They're utterly gripping. They're utterly thrilling. They are. Sometimes it's pantomime. Sometimes it's opera. Sometimes it's Hollywood. Sometimes it's a horror movie. But it's never vaudeville. It's always drama. It's always drama when Argentina play. They are captivating. Utterly captivating. Love them or loathe them. But I don't think Trump was really able to help Argentina. I think they managed to help themselves, Argentina, but they lost, and Spain go eventually. Trump can't leave he can't leave the podium because somebody's winning. The crowd. Why don't the crowd love me? I want the crowd to love me. No, you've actually got to go out and do something honestly. That's the thing with football, Donald. You can't. You've actually got to go out and win the game as fairly as you possibly can, and your cheating's there for the world to see. You know, if you get involved in it, and most of the time you will get punished for that cheating, and you have to take it in the chin and move on and try and win fairly, honestly. Try and earn something as opposed to just saying, I want that. He wants the crowd to adore him, and he wants the big shiny thing, and he's no idea that there's such a thing as hard work and genuine skill and emotion and care, passion that goes into this stuff. He just wants to have it, and he's standing there at the side. They say, you have to crop him out of the photographs as Spain lift the World Cup. So what's my takeaway from this World Cup in general? I'll just fire through these quickly, folks. I've kept you far too long, and I've had to write these down quick so to help me do this. The main thing, if I think back in this World Cup, I'll probably think about two things: goal scorers and stadiums. Now you get the celebrity in the Razzmatazz. We've discussed the Americans. That's what America does. I know it was in Canada and Mexico as well. But the Americans stay very razzmatazz. That's part of the thing. But the constant focus on faces in the crowd from the outside broadcast directors you're missing key moments of the game. You're missing how moves were starting or how moves were ending. You're getting to the point you're missing tackles. You were missing, yellow card situations or players going through on goal because we're too busy showing you fucking Tom Cruise or Beckham. The number of times we saw Beckham in the crowd, Jesus. At least he was a football celebrity, mind you, but it was a guy who has actually played at a World Cup. But what I'll take away is the stadiums and the goal scorers. The amount, as I say, and I'm growing up back until 1970 for over 50 years. Ronaldo, R9, Brazilian Ronaldo's 8 goals at the 2002 World Cup was the outlier. I know there's an extra. There's only, if you go all the way to the final, there's one extra game in this World Cup than there has been in every World Cup back until 1994. So it's not as if it's just because of the amount of extra teams that were at this World Cup, the expanded nature. It didn't really give you much more of an advantage as a goal scorer trying to get the Golden Boot. For somebody to get 10, and at one point it looked like they were heading for, they were going to have a go at Jules Fontaine's record of 14, because it was incredible for Messi to have scored 6 goals by the group stage. It's a 3-team group stage, as there always is at a World Cup in the first round. This is when I was growing up, the tally was, other than Ronaldo in 2002, it was 6 goals, sometimes 5, mostly 6. 78 World Cup, 82, 86, 90, all the way through, it was 6 goals or 5 goals. That was what won the Golden Boot, except for Ronaldo, was 8 goals in 2002, and Mbappe and Messi both went into the final games they played that last weekend of the World Cup on 8 goals each. Mbappe gets another 2. The rate has got, and you've got Haaland in there as well. He's got 7 goals. Kane got 6, and Jude Bellingham becomes the first Englishman with that amazing goal he scored to seal the winner in the bronze medal match. Becomes the first Englishman ever to score 7 goals at the World Cup finals. He's the top scorer for England. Doesn't even get noticed in the race for the Golden Boot because he leaves it so late. But it's an amazing thing. It's just anybody to get over 6 goals is a phenomenon. And for the last 50, Gregor Lattle got 7 at the 1974 World Cup. But that's like 52 years ago. It's quite incredible the goals that were being scored, the number of goals. And I think it was Oyarzabal or Marino. It was Oyarzabal, and I think it was 5 goals he got getting into this. So he could have got the 6-goal tally if he scored one in the final there. It was tremendous. But the stadiums, and not always in a good way. You've got 3 countries taking part in this World Cup. The stadiums in Mexico, gorgeous, beautiful football stadiums. Monument, iconic. Guadalajara and Monterrey, just ridiculously beautiful in their own particular ways, really distinctive, really Mexican, but really, really football. And the Azteca, I've never been to Mexico. I've never been to any of the venues at this World Cup. I've been in the city of Toronto. I've been in New York. I've been in Boston, even though Foxborough's miles away. Chicago wasn't used this World Cup. I've never been in the country of Mexico, but you watch these on the telly, you've seen them from all sorts of angles, really clearly because of modern technology. The filming of the World Cup was phenomenal. It was kind of surround sound type stuff. You felt you were at these games in many ways, but I couldn't take my eyes off the stadiums a lot. No matter how good the action on the pitch, any kind of low shot showing the Americans, the USA stadiums, 11 stadiums in the States, 3 in Mexico, 2 in Canada. The 2 in Canada were just seemed so homely and lovely. I'm influenced by my love of Canada. I've got family over there for forever. The first place I ever went abroad was over to Toronto. My extended family staying in Scarborough. And you got the idea of Canada compared to the States, just being a kind of homely, loving, caring place, the harsh old US of A, but the cutthroat USA. But the stadium in Toronto, which they've just got up to that kind of capacity recently, beautiful, proper, just looked, it could be it'd be too big for anywhere except Ibrox or Parkhead or Hampden in Scotland, but a proper kind of British style stadium. And the stadium in Vancouver, although indoors, it's got a roof and all that. It was done in a kind of 70s style. It wasn't like the ones in the States. I think the Azteca takes it. The Azteca definitely takes it still as being an iconic stadium. The final should have been there for the third time. It was a proper football stadium, and I watched that England-Mexico game, and you could feel it. You could feel it over the telly. You can hear it for the commentators and the pundits what it's like just to be there. It's a bucket list job, the Azteca. But the stadiums in the States, they transfix me in a completely different way. It wasn't always good. It was dystopian at times. I've described the MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, where they have the final. It's got a capacity of just over 80,000. It's monumental, but there's something about it. I think I described it as being like ziggurats turned upside down and then forced to face each other. It's also a kind of reprise, a twisted reprise, an Inception style, Christopher Nolan's Inception style, picking up of the Manhattan skyline and twisting it in on itself and just transposing it to East Rutherford in New Jersey in stadium form. There's something very, very ugly about it, almost excitingly ugly. It's a brutal looking stadium, but not brutalist. Unreal. The MetLife Stadium where they had the final, not nice, not good. A bit like the stadiums in Arlington and in Houston as well. You're transfixed seeing what's going on with these stadiums, and it's not nice. It's kind of like a massive. It reminded me a bit of what they do on purpose in, is it the second Aliens film, Aliens, where it's the navigator guy. I'm not really into the Alien film, but it's like futuristic. It's kind of sci-fi futurism, but it's futuristic stuff from the past. This has been here for centuries, and it's a spaceship. The old spaceship that they find in that's centuries old. That's kind of what these that same feeling of, oh, this is amazing, but it's horrible. It's exciting in all the wrong ways. Some of these stadiums, the Lo-Fi Stadium in Inglewood in California, unbelievable. There's a great thing on BBC iPlayer about that. A wee kind of feature on that from the BBC News Channel. You should check out. Shows you how they operate that place. But that's a phenomenal. It was beautiful too. It was amazing. But most of them were just really kind of wow. There's only 2 stadiums in my life where I've watched live games from on television where you can't see the near touchline. One of them is Gayfield Park, Arbroath, and the other one is the MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, that's just staged the World Cup final. You could have the benches are almost and I had the suspicion that because they're NFL stadiums, the pitch isn't wide enough. Players are playing at a World Cup and they're having to put their back against the wall to take a shy to give themselves the put because there's not enough pitch space. Not enough space either side of the touchlines, and you couldn't see for the dugouts the touchline, the near side touchline in the World Cup final. I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. At least, you think of Gayfield, one thing, a bit of Gayfield, they have to put up with the North Sea coming over the coming over the wall there and hitting you when you're standing in the terrace. And well, according to all the dystopian environmental ecological films that I've been watching, they're going to get that. They're going to get the whole of Manhattan landed on top of that stadium in East Rutherford. So I think that's a lot of them are NFL stadiums, but pretty spectacular. The political backdrop to the whole thing, plus ça change, every World Cup is disgusting. Disgusting in an economic way. It's disgusting the way FIFA run them. It is politically, there is a murderous dictator 9 times out of 10 in charge of the country that FIFA have taken the World Cup to. So fuck it. That's something we've got to do. FIFA's got to go. FIFA's got to be revolutionised. It's got to be democratised. It's just, it's horrendous. That is just no greater example than now with Trump. Well, Putin's probably a greater example, and he runs Trump. So in 2018, the other thing that stuck with is the commentators and pundits. You listen to these people across 5 weeks. They'll be put into their little pairs, their little teams. Lee Dixon with Sam Matterface. Danny Murphy with, that's on ITV, and you get Danny Murphy with Steve Wilson on BBC. It's the same guy, and they start doing banter. I've found that the commentators aren't good at the banter. They're really nasty at times, quite childish. They can't take it. I feel as if they've got something to prove, and I know that commentators are in charge of that dynamic. The football guy is there to make a few extra quids, he's there, and the journalist, quite rightly, isn't. He's commentating. We're talking about football here, so I'll be in charge of this. But some of them, Steve Wilson, particularly nasty at times with Danny Wilson, and I thought Danny Murphy. I keep calling Danny Wilson. I'm obsessed with Livingston defenders, but I think Lee Dixon and Sam Matterface, that was pretty painful at times as well. Sam Matterface is so Alan Partridge that I don't really think he gets offended, but John Champion with Ali McCoist, and they work together on European games, and I think just out of nowhere, Champion will just seize on a chance to slag Ali McCoist about playing for Scotland. When did you score a goal? Scotland never scored a goal at a World Cup and stuff like that. Fuck you. He was a horrible prick, and having him commentating on the Scotland game, your hackles go up unfairly because it's a non-Scot commentating in a Scotland game of such importance. But that was a badging. BBC lost. They lost the two. It's good that it's channels that everybody can access, terrestrial television at the World Cup. So that's a massive thing, and we should cherish that. But ITV definitely won the battle of the two broadcasters because they were there. They were just there when they were covering games. They were in New York. They're looking over the New York sky, the Manhattan skyline, but they're in the States now. Eventually, of course, for England's bigger games, that they get the commentary team over there. They get the pundits over there as well, the BBC, and for the final as well, but it's too little too late, and it was particularly brutal. As a few games, I think the USA against Bosnia, when I did turn up the phone, I was sitting watching that in my bed. They're covering that from a studio somewhere, probably somewhere else in the States, and it was the same. We had Liam McLeod and James McFadden covering Mexico. It was the Azteca, but they were covering Uzbekistan against Colombia, which was a great game. It was it was like 80,000 Colombians in the Azteca. This fantastic 3-1 game of football with mad goals. I would recommend you go back and watch the highlights of that, if nothing else. And there's no sense of the atmosphere, which must have been amazing because they're over in the States, McFadden and Liam McLeod at that point in time, but they're not in Mexico. They're not in the Azteca, and that was BBC. Really, that was insulting. It was bad. I suppose budgets. It's publicly funded. But I thought that the best actual commentary team, I ended up kind of liking Danny Murphy and Steve Wilson. I think they probably nailed it. They were quite easy going. Danny Murphy, I don't agree with a lot of his opinions. At times I've not really liked Danny Murphy. Not really liked his opinions, but he kind of grew on me as the World Cup went on. Quite gentle, quite kind of... Lee Dixon is the one guy who get more upset than the commentators, and he starts when him and Ali McCoist are helping, who was it, Sam Matterface for the World Cup final. There's a bit with Simeone, he misses that chance at the end, and Ali's saying he's got to keep it down. No, he's got to get his head above the ball because he's a striker. Ali, you might have noticed Lee Dixon. Oh, he's trying though. I bet he's trying to get. It was just a right go at him. So Lee Dixon is definitely inherited the Mark Lawrenson thing of being a professional misery guts, but also. He's quite small-minded as well, as far as I'm concerned. he's quite fragile, his little ego there. Emma Hayes, hands down, the best pundit across the whole World Cup. Particularly good after the final. She's over at the ground. She's in the MetLife Stadium for ITV, and she's got Karen Carney there, she's managed about 3 different clubs, and they're really close. It's Karen Carney cites Emma Hayes a great influence on her, but she was refusing to have it, like slagging Argentina for their antics. You see a manager there, somebody who's used to kind of, we've got to move on. Aye, this shit happens. You've got to kind of move on and appreciate how they've played the game. And the fact Argentina have got to the final, what they do to get there, and that she's very mature with that. But her tactical analysis is just fucking brilliant. You've got these guys here who are talking the kind of shite we're getting from Gary Neville and Wayne Rooney and Alan Shearer about how it was unfair that Mbappe was getting to be included in his goals against England getting included in the Golden Book. 4-0 down, your teammate comes back and scores 2 goals against them when your teammate's only trying. That's me. But I thought Emma is a tactical analysis apart from anything else, but she just wants to talk about football. She just wants to talk about football. It's no golf club banter shite. So she was definitely the best. VAR protocols, this whole thing, suddenly the corner, they always get brought in for the World Cup. Corner kicks can be changed to goal kicks, but goal kicks that are badly awarded, that are wrongly awarded, can't be changed to corner kicks. That was quite interesting. That's one we can all start spouting off next season. Actually, mate, because it's a corner, they can't change a goal kick to a corner kick. But that was quite interesting. The automated offside with the 3D mapping of the players and the officials, that really helped. You didn't notice big offside. There was a few that went dodgily wrong, and we didn't see the image, SPFL style. We didn't get to see the 3D image because they knew they'd got it wrong. But most of the time, offsides, they have this buzzer beeper thing in the handle of the linesman's flags, so they know when to raise. They're getting told when to raise their flags, but they know when it is offside. And that was all just done and dusted. Most offside decisions were just done and dusted in seconds with this automated offside. So let's hope we can all afford that soon in more domestic leagues. That was quite good. I quite enjoyed that. The Fowler and Balogun affair, that was horrible. I don't think game's gone. As I say, there's been other incidents like that in various World Cups, but Infantino should be gone. Gianni Infantino is just scum, absolute vermin, in your face, like any dictator. And he works with Putin, he works with Donald Trump, he worked with Qatar to make sure these places could get the World Cup, and we'll get it quicker than ever again. That's why we're having 3 different continents involved in the next World Cup, because that means we can get back to having it in Saudi Arabia, we get back to Asia, and they can get their turn again extra quick. It's no because of any sudden charity towards the idea of Argentina and Uruguay getting to celebrate the centenary of the first ever World Cup final. So he's scum, he has got to go, and he had to bow to Donald Trump as he did the whole bloody tournament. Maybe he's actually a master of salesmanship. Well, we know he's a master of salesmanship. Gianni Infantino, he's the only guy who could deal with Trump, but he's the guy that took us there in the first fucking place. We shouldn't have been in the States with Trump in charge. The stuff with the V's, isn't it? Like the Iranian players, the USA are supposed to be at war with Iran. They're not. It's just Donald Trump pushing up oil prices. That'll never get resolved until his guys have made the money they've got to make from increased oil prices. But Iran having to fly in every day from a different country to play their games was something else. But the Fowler and Balogun thing, this whole, there's no such thing as intent. That's not how you judge fouls and what have you in football. So the fact that Fowler and Balogun might not have intended to rake his stud in the guy's calf and then stamping his ankle doesn't matter. He did it. Luka Digne didn't mean to kick Lamine Yamal for the penalty in the Spain-France semi-final, but he did. Same thing. So it was quite right. It was a red card. Trump, who knows, he played football at college. He fucking cheated at that as well. He chucks in because he wants to try and help the USA, and hilariously, again, he can't. He doesn't help anybody other than himself. So he doesn't know how to help other people trying to win popularity contests. He fucked it for the USA, who were looking great under Pochettino. They were doing magical things. They were electric to watch against Paraguay. Phenomenal in that first game. Great against Bosnia as well. Really exciting what the USA were going to do, and I think it screwed with their heads as much as it inspired Belgium. when Balogun-Gate reinstated after that, and it basically put the States out of the World Cup. That was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Infantino needs to go. What was my kind of the standout team, perhaps? The best? It has to be Cape Verde. Cape Verde are the sensation of this World Cup. I see it proven that expanding it to 48 teams isn't about diluting the quality of the World Cup. It's just far too cumbersome a tournament to be watching, to be keeping up with. It's just a money fest. But Cape Verde, Cabo Verde, the Blue Sharks, at their first ever World Cup, was a population of like 500,000 odds, and going out there, they have played 3 different world champion teams, world champion nations, and lost to none of them over 90 minutes. Drawn with Uruguay, and like Uruguay, they were 1-0 up in Uruguay. Uruguay, quick couple of goals, 2-1. We're beating you now, right? Let's just stop all this stuff, Cape Verde. Get back in your box. They come back at them. The Spain, the opening game for Spain and for Cape Verde. By the 10 minutes to go, I was just heart in mouth. That's what a World Cup is all about, caring about teams, countries you've never even heard of before almost. Don't let Spain score, come on. And Big Vizinha, the goalkeeper in his 40s now, and he's in tears at the end, playing fantastically against Spain, who became world champions. It's even better in retrospect what Cape Verde did about that game against Argentina. I was going on holiday. The next day I was going down to England. And I'd been trying to do a few last-minute things, so I missed Australia against Egypt earlier that night, and I was stupidly, despite years of better experience, thinking, I'll just watch a bit of Argentina-Cape Verde to unwind, because I like to go up at the crack of dawn when I'm going on holiday, so old man stuff. I want to be, it was in North Yorkshire we're going to, and I wanted to be in the digs for basically 9 o'clock in the morning. Be at Carlisle for 7 in the morning, be in the digs for 9 in the morning, get the benefit, get the most at your the cottage that you've rented for a week. So the night before, it was the late game at 11 o'clock kickoff, was Cape Verde against Argentina in the knockout rounds, and I had, because I'm not wanting to miss any of the action, I'm looking at it right now, there's a telly in this kitchen here. Do I dare to show you it? A telly up there in the wall in this kitchen. I'm in the kitchen because I'm trying to do it. The rest is football style, and I'm sitting at this point, this table. I must have had the laptop on or something to shut it down, but it's because I don't want to miss any of the action. So if I've got to dash through to have a cup of tea or something like that, grab something out the fridge for the living room just two seconds away, I still have the telly on mute because I don't want the two sounds clashing. One of them's a nanosecond ahead of the other telly. So I come through here, I'd switched that, I was like, right, that's it. Argentina had gone 2-1 up. I thought, that is it. This game's done. You need to get an early night now. I don't know what time it was. You got into extra time, but Argentina going 2-1 up straight away. This game's done, right? Go to your bed. My wife had already gave up. She was away to her bed ahead of the holiday. And I come through here, and that telly's still on. And I grabbed the old, where is it? The remote control. Right. There's a remote control just here. I don't know why I'm showing you this. But I grabbed this remote control here, and I went, I'm just going to switch that. I'll just see what this guy does. And it's like, I watched it in silence. It was on mute. And I just stood here in this kitchen at whatever time it was, 1 o'clock in the morning, going, oh my fucking God. Never seen a goal. Sydney Lopez Cabral, what a goal. Not the best goal of the World Cup, but maybe the best strike of the World Cup. And it's the fact it's Cape Verde, and they've just come back again. I'd written them off. I'm like, this is done. Argentina will take care of this. They're the holders, Argentina. So they've held the holders of the World Cup over 90 minutes and come back at them in extra time as well. They've held the team that won the World Cup eventually to a 0-0, and they basically helped eliminate Uruguay, who won the World Cup in 1930 and 1950. So it was a hell of a thing from Cape Verde. It was phenomenal to watch. But that moment when Sydney Lopez Cabral curls that one in for the edge of the box, for outside the box, and he goes into the crowd to see his wife or his girlfriend, whatever. And I'm sure there's a couple of RGs giving it, you better get out of here, Pat. Fucking unsporting bastards, they really are. Nasty bastards, a lot of them. But that was incredible. That was probably the most stunning moment, perhaps, of the entire World Cup in terms of underdogs or whatever. Moment that shocked the earth, moment that shocked the world. That was fantastic. Big Vizinha, the goalkeeper, Sidney Lewis Cabral. The South American teams talking of Uruguay, yeah, the way Argentina lost in the fight, disgraceful. This anti-football stuff, just want to batter their opponents. The way Uruguay were eliminated, absolutely horrendous. They were a terrible disappointment. Uruguay didn't win a single game, but their final game, losing 1-0 to Spain, again, it'll be that frustration of not being able to get the ball off Spain, where an equaliser would have done them the world of good, but Cape Verde go through because they draw their 3 games, and Uruguay, they've got a better goal difference than Uruguay or whatever, but Uruguay are chasing an equaliser and they just lose their shit completely. Is it CONMEBOL was the fella who just about breaks a Spain player's leg, and then he's gone for the ref after the final whistle. He's trying to punch the referee. The 3 officials, main officials, are backing off him, and nobody's holding him back. He's going to batter the officials on the park as well. It was disgusting. Paraguay, I love the way they played against Germany. I love their intent. I love their commitment. I love their passion, as people keep saying. But against France, it really went OTT. I didn't mind even the scraping up of the penalty spot, so Mbappe might miss the penalty. But when they start trying to break players' legs, put people out of action, out of a job, but potentially, and try to inflict suspensions on players who will be continuing in the tournament, that is anti-sport. That's horrendous. Ecuador and Colombia, fair play to them. They went out in quite sporting style, but it was all the South American stuff. It was really poor. And you even had, what's his face, Neymar, the penalty he takes at the end for Brazil when they go out against Norway in the last 16. The goalkeeper's trying to put him off. He gets up and he gets in his face and all that when he's wasting his own country's time. Neymar. So there's a lot of really poor mindsets in South America from players who should really know better and are better than that. What was the best goal at this World Cup? I mean, so that was a belter from Sidney Lopez Cabral. I think I loved the first goal that France scored against Senegal, where the guy who's, I think, had more assists than anybody else ever at a World Cup for France, a beautiful ball Michael Olise put through to Kylian Mbappe. Not the last time he would do it, and the way Mbappe runs onto it and turns and sweeps it into the net at the same time from a really tight angle, the way he read the ball from Olise, that was a wonderful goal. But the second goal that Mbappe scores in that game, he slams it in from the edge of the box, being given a sniff right at the end of Senegal are starting to rally, is also, there was brilliant goals. I have to say that, and I'm not just doing this to be a kind of hipster contrary twat, it's Egypt's disallowed goal against Argentina. The first time Zico had the ball in the back of the net against Argentina for Egypt, that was a thing. I can't watch the foul. I can't properly judge the foul that was eventually disallowed for at the start of the move, because the rest of the move just takes your attention away every time. The way they go down that wing, the dribble, I feel amazing. Then the Salah, that the ball played through to Zico from Salah is maybe that's the pass of the tournament. It's beautiful. And Zico puts it away. And the fact that it gets disallowed, and then I was heartbroken for them, and then he goes and does it again 7 minutes later. Zico scores another amazing goal. But I actually thought that was the best goal of the whole tournament. Also, probably the best cross of the tournament, it's Cucho Hernandez for Colombia, where Campaz scores the goal for Colombia, the third goal in their 3-1 win over Uzbekistan, their group opener, I think it was, at the Azteca. That game's insane. You should watch that back. The goals are all crazy. There's something daft and brilliant about all the goals that are scored. But that one, it's like into the final moments of the game. I think it's 2-1 at this point. And even after this, Uzbekistan went up and slammed it off the post. It slammed a great shot off the bar in what is their first appearance at the World Cup under former World Cup winning captain and Ballon d'Or Fabio Cannavaro as manager. But Colombia go up the pitch again, and there's 80,000 Colombians there in the Azteca, and this fella is a wee tank. He's built like this Cucho Hernandez, and he wrestles the ball off the fullback, and he turns round and he puts this ball to the back post, which he kind of volleys it, from the ground, just volleys this thing on the turn to the back post, and there's a header that's headed into the back of the net. Just a goal that sums up that entire game and everything I love about Colombia. Kind of crazy brilliance. That was a great goal. I really loved that. But I think Zico's disallowed goal against. And immediately you'll mention something to me, and I think, no, you're right. That's a much better goal. So many goals scored here. Or the I think the best game, probably that Egypt against Argentina game might be the best game, most captivating game anyway. I was kind of gutted for Egypt, but also was happy to see Messi. I didn't want to see Messi going out like that. All the England games are totally captivating, but I think, as they're saying, maybe making a bit too much of it because nobody, beating Mexico in the World Cup's never been the way to win the World Cup. But as I said before, the last two times Mexico staged the World Cup, the team that put them out did go on to the final. So it was a monumental moment, and it was an utterly enthralling game. Mexico against England at the Azteca. I watched that in the wee small hours on my phone, lying in a bed in Pickering in North Yorkshire. The length and scale of the tournament, like this podcast, far too long, just brutal, it's ridiculous, and FIFA now want to put it up to 64 games, which would make it actually easier to manage. You won't have the same ridiculous situation in the group stage where there's basically hardly any teams that are going out after 72 games, but Alexander Cheferin, that's a big moment. He's the president of UEFA, has boycotted, and the Euros are expanding as well, and the European club tournaments have got these new Swiss-style groups. They're just having an expansion war, FIFA and UEFA, and we're getting caught up in it, and there's no time to do anything else with your life. You can't calm down for the football. Eventually you're going to burn out. So it's ridiculous, the length and the scale of the tournaments. It was a gripping World Cup, it was a monumental World Cup, but at times it wasn't really enjoyable. It became a bit of a marathon. I liked ref cam. I think that was underused, probably because it's a threat that seeing everything from the referee's angle on the pitch would show that the referee had missed something. But that was underused, ref cam. I really liked that. Getting to see players scoring goals at a World Cup from pitch level was scintillating. Perv cam, well, we discussed that in the previous World Cup previous pods I did in the World Cup. It's a horrendous thing. This continual focus on young women in the crowd. The momentum graph, I like that. This beautiful thing, the momentum graph, a new kind of innovation, a new graphic. And France, I know they've got the Louvre, but the momentum graph from that final, Spain should hang that in the Prado because they were phenomenal, their momentum in that game. The hydration breaks, I discussed this before, I need them. It's got to go because it's blatantly splitting the games into quarters. I think there's a lot of games at that World Cup, they were required because the temperatures were horrendous, but it's got to go. It's splitting the game into quarters for advertising breaks. And it's quite amazing being at that friendly the other night at Ibrox Rangers against Saint Etienne. I know it's a friendly, they always get called in the 90th minute, but because it's a friendly, there have been like 20 substitutions in the second half, but with no hydration breaks, and then the referee just blows the whistle in the 90th minute. I was like, I felt I'd seen 5 minutes of the game. It was unreal. It's like, that's only 9:30, and I'm going up the road after a 7:45 kick. It was because you'd had a whole summer of watching games with 12 minutes of injury time, and it was 5 minutes of injury time at the end of extra time in the final on Sunday. Everything's just getting too big and too long. So that's the hydration breaks, but I required them because there's so many games. You're so knackered watching so many games. I need old man needing to go for a pee every quarter of an hour, and also trying to get the kettle on, trying to get something to eat. And I required them. They worked out quite well for me. Scotland, we've discussed that. I've discussed that in previous podcasts, but the thing for Scotland and England for me is you're both back on the cusp of the greatest thing you've ever, at the greatest extent you've ever got to. I know England, it's a long way from a semi-final to a final of the World Cup and winning that World Cup, but really, for most of my life, England have been a quarter-final team. So take the lesson from France, from Argentina, and from Spain. Just stick with it, go for it, stick with it, and you're going to have to get over that hump. There's going to be more pain because you're closer to it. We saw Argentina nearly get rid of Messi as a player. Messi nearly chucked Argentina because they kept getting to a final. And now they keep winning. No, they did keep winning. They won 3 finals after they'd lost 3 finals, Messi. So you've got to stick with it, and English do the same. They should stick with Tuchel. They probably shouldn't have got rid of him. They should probably stuck with Gareth Southgate. But he's done the same as Gareth Southgate and taken it that little inch, that all-important inch further, and it does become a game of inches when you're at your furthest ever extent. Scotland, we don't get to World Cups, haven't got to a World Cup for the last 28 years. We got back there and we hung in basically because of the way the format of the tournament. It's the longest we've ever been at a World Cup. Take that the same way England are forced to take the bronze medal. And just stick with the Steve Clarke plan. If not Steve Clarke himself, I would get him back. A bitter moment for me, Lionel Messi, was it 18 and a half years ago, saw him at Ibrox, 0-0, and they came out with the anti-football jibe, which was picked up by the rest of Scottish football because Rangers were on the cusp of winning a like a quadruple that season. We could have won the treble and a European trophy. So the anti-football, it sounds like an English expression, but it's an Argentinian expression, Argentinian Spanish. And this was a monolingual final. Only the second time both teams in the World Cup final spoke the same language. It's the language of football. And everybody's multilingual these days anyway. Your top-level players, because they've all played in about 15 different countries. But that's the first monolingual final we've had since the first World Cup final. Argentina against Uruguay in 1930. And that was all sorts of nonsense went on before that, and all sorts of bitterness and riots, and that went on after that one as well. So it actually seems when people speak the same language, they get on even worse. What is it? If Spain are the great underachievers, and they're now in France with the great underachievers, and the two of them are now the top end of the game, who is it next to? Is it Belgium? It must be Belgium. They too, like the Spain I grew up with, have only lost one final of the Euros. That's the only final they've ever been in, Belgium. The Euro 1980 final. They lost 2-1 to Germany in Rome. Big Horst Rubisch. But surely Belgium, we all thought it's because of the Walloons and the Flames. It's a division they've got in that country. That's what Rangers and Celtic, it's the sectarianism. It's the Rangers and Celtic, the players all hate each other. Well, none of them come from Scotland now, Rangers and Celtic players. But even back then, when that was the jibe, most of the Rangers and Celtic players got on really well. The Scottish players, really good pals. And they did great. They loved playing for Scotland because for once we're playing for the same team. And Uruguay, the next most kind of virulent duopoly in domestic football in the world is Peñarol and Nacional, Montevideo, Uruguay. They're the other two teams that have won their league most often after the Old Firm have won the Scottish top title most often. And Uruguay won the World Cup in 1930, won it again in 1950 with the semi-final just 20 years ago. They put us out a couple of World Cups as well. Uruguay won a whole lot of Copa Americas. They're always there or thereabouts. Population 3 million. It's not to do with population, and hating, having internecine hatred usually inspires you to greatness. So I don't know. Maybe it's all about just, if you've got the talent, find a way to make it work, and the country will love you one way or the other. But Messi, we saw him playing for Barcelona at Ibrox, and we held him to a 0-0 back in 2007-2008 season, and it was one of the greatest nights ever at Ibrox. What a team. And I'm maybe being contrary and all that. When I finally got to see U2, it wasn't, Bono, The Edge. He's like, oh my God, what a guy, The Edge. He's like a total robot, but he's belting out this amazing music. He's so taciturn, you can see he's no very he's the man. Oh, then there's Bono, who's like a little pixie jumping about the stage. He's so emotional, he's getting folk up on the stage to dance. When I went to see U2 at the SEC just 40 years ago, it was Adam Clayton. He was the guy that was just, belting it out, just belting, donk, 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 donk. He was wearing an actual dog collar, pair of Doc Martens, kind of ripped t-shirt and the drain pipe jeans, total punk look, and he was just standing there belting out the bass lines, and I thought, he's fucking great. I totally love him. And it's the same that night we played Barcelona at Ibrox in the Champions League. It was Carlos Puyol. You've got Xavi, Iniesta, Ronaldinho and Thierry Henry were in that Barcelona team as well, and of course Leo Messi. You get to see him in the flesh. He's fucking best part of 20 years ago, and he's playing the World Cup final now, and he was top man back then as well. What a career! But it was Carlos Puyol who just belting up. He's playing at fullback that night. He's belting up and down the wing. But he couldn't get past Rangers, and that was fine. At the end of the game, he was applauding the whole crowd. Carlos Puyol, what a gentleman! What a great guy! What a total legend! And then Messi, I don't know what happened at that press conference. I think he's been fed the line by a nefarious journalist. He's just a young boy. He's just a baby, really, at the time. And he's like, it was anti-football. It was anti-football. Rangers were playing the night. That's how we couldn't score against him. He's bad. His team's just failed to beat somebody they're supposed to beat. That was fine. And he got his revenge against us by scoring one of the two goals. Him and Henry scored against us in the return game, which I went over to in the new camp. And it was a fucking privilege. Rangers wearing all white in the new camp and only losing 2-0 despite touching the ball twice in each half. It was quite an achievement that night. But to see Messi scoring, he's like watching somebody in fast forward. It was unbelievable. Well, it's not really a major boast because he scored so many goals. Everybody's seen Messi scoring somewhere or other. But it's an honour looking back on it. But it pissed me off because he came out and he accused us of anti-football, and I knew, because I'm a bit of a dick and reading about things like this, that in Argentinian Spanish, it's all one word, Mantefutbol, and it was used by Celtic fans for the rest of that season to chip away at a potential Rangers achievement, and to chip away at the fact that we'd go to a European final, which is a major achievement for any Scottish club. Doesn't matter really how you get there, as long as you're not cheating. Oh, you were, because the EPTs. No, then it wasn't. But it was also an easy. It sounds English, so it's kind of easy for folk to repeat. And that's what we got for the rest of that season. This is the Celtic that came to Ibrox last season and beat us in the Scottish Cup by attacking us twice, I think, in the game. Trying to have 2 goals at us in that game, just sitting in under Martin O'Neill. The thuggish Martin O'Neill style of football, which I totally approve of. I don't have a problem with at all. But it was a jibe that was fodder for Rangers detractors, of which there are plenty. But it's based on what happened in Argentina when Estudiantes de La Plata were winning the Copa Libertadores and then get into the Intercontinental Cup final against the champions of Europe back in the 60s. Celtic suffered from this when Racing Club of Avellaneda played them after Celtic won the 67 European Cup, and they won the 67 Copa Libertadores, and it had to go to a replay and a playoff in Montevideo, particularly thuggish. So there's a whole lot of sendings off and what have you, and we punished players who were sent off, and they all got a car because they won the game, the Argentinians, after that game. And Estudiantes had got up to things against Milan and against Manchester United and that, and these World Club Championships, effectively. It was Intercontinental Cup as it was back then. It would just, I was going to say make your eyes water, but make your eye socket bulge. It would knock your eyeballs out. They were horrific. Carlos Bilardo, who was manager of the Argentina team who won the 1986 World Cup, would have darning needles in the big folds of the big woolly socks they had in the 60s, and he would go about stabbing players effectively on the pitch. That was the least of the stuff they got up to. Ended up there, I think it was their owner or their general manager shot himself because he had such a horrendous reputation. The players getting jailed by the Argentinian government for the stuff they were doing to Milan in one of those Intercontinental Cup finals. I think it was Feyenoord the Dutch are the most violent football nation on earth. In practice, in like the ability to fight to square go, the Dutch are the tallest nation on earth. They kicked the shit back. They just went for them again. They're like, aye, that's fine. They knocked the fucking shit out of them. But it got to the point where European teams were refusing to play. The European champions were refusing to play the Intercontinental Cup final because of Estudiantes de La Plata, and they were hated within their own country as well. And one of the clubs, Newell's Old Boys, where Messi comes from, that he played for the youths, the wee boys teams for Newell's Old Boys, ironically, and Rosario Central. It's the big derby there. Rosario Central as well. These were the teams that were going to play beautiful football in Argentina. They were playing lovely styles of football. So in Rosario, they throw about the anti-football jibe quite regularly because they hated that style of football that was played by other clubs in Argentina. So Messi knew what he was saying. I think there was 3 bookings in that game when we drew 0-0 with Barcelona at Ibrox. I was at the game, and it was just Rangers were defensive. We're not going to let him roll over and let you give us an absolute tanking. They were defensive. We got a point. And for it to be called anti-football was just completely disingenuous and completely inaccurate. And it was Messi the other night, where Cucurella goes up to him, and I think it's been established that what Cucurella is saying to him is, this is when Fernandez had just been sent off for putting, is it Pau Cubarsí? I think it was Pau Cubarsí that he spun through the air, the foul on him, which should have been a straight red card as far as I was concerned, never made a second yellow. And I think Cucurella is saying to Messi, he's hit his, Messi's kind of, why is he still doing the deck? He's acting it. And I think Cucurella said, no, he's actually landed in his face, he's hurt his face. Or, at the time I thought Cucurella might just instinctively be going to cover his mouth, but he's just landed one finger in his top lip because he's about to talk to Lionel Messi. And he didn't look like he was going to goad him or have a rammy with him. It looked like he was just going to speak to him. And Messi straight away, and you can see Cucurella's face changing, going, no way. It turns to the ref. He couldn't remember the sign. The sign is you put you cross your arms to say he's covered his mouth to say something racist to me. That was fucking anti-football incarnate. And Lionel Messi's had his dark moments, and no wonder, because he gets kicked from pillar to post and has done for his entire life, for 39 years basically. So I don't blame him for that at all. And it's like that last World Cup where he eventually wins it with Argentina, which I wanted him to do, and I'm so glad he did, and I wouldn't have objected to him winning a second World Cup. Lionel Messi, he's settled the debate about who's the greatest player of all time. But he's, in that last World Cup, he became not the Catalan, but a true Argentinian captain in that quarter-final defeat of the Dutch, where they're having rammies with the Dutch, who don't mess about, and it's carrying on after the game, and he's getting interviewed live on Argentine television, Messi, and the Dutch players are walking past and they're mouthing off, and he's saying, "Shut it, you talk, you fool, no, you dick, no, shut up." And this goes back to the Argentinian, they're watching, they're going, "Yes, he's one of us." Scaloni was talking before the game, before the final on Sunday, saying they were lucky, the Argentina team, and that they all grew up in rough areas, these guys, playing football in rough areas. So they knew how to roughhouse, they knew how to stick up for themselves. And I think there's a feeling maybe that Messi, away to Barcelona, but a gazillionaire since he was 12 years old, hasn't really had that kind of thing. He's not really part of he's not got that street smarts. It's all part of the Argentinian character, their idea of themselves. But to see him come out and do it, just like, I'll fucking have a square go as well, just mouthing off and being a bit, but standard, like, the Dutch are all huge, so it's taking a bit of balls and that, but he's just, not being a nice boy. He's showing he's got a nasty side and he'll get stuck in with his mates. Brilliant, legend. That, the other night, was maybe the other side of that, when he's shown that he can be a fucking scumbag as well. He'll do anything to win, the same as it. So it's probably increased his legend in Argentina. But just to show how small-minded and bitter I am, I thought, there you go, I can finally love you. I can finally fully love you, because anti-football, you've just done it. You have just done it, trying to get an opponent sent off for saying something racist to you when he was basically, playing with his own moustache. So, yeah, that was it. That was that World Cup. I think I've talked about it more than enough. There's no way I've covered everything I want to. There's still a million things I think I want to talk to, but I'm not going to go for my first ever 3-hour podcast. It's out there now. If you want to know what I think about the World Cup, you'll have seen it. I'm sorry it's so out of sync. There's no way my voice will be arriving in your ears about 15 minutes after my mouth's moving on screen. So hopefully you've just listened to it. But thanks very much for your time, folks, your ample time. The thing for me is, I'm going to talk for another 50 minutes. The thing, why are you doing all this about the World Cup? It's supposed to be a Rangers podcast. I'm not supposed to be any kind of podcast. I just talk a lot about Rangers, and a lot of you come on to hear my Rangers stuff. So, and that's all I want to talk. It's mostly what I want to talk. That's my team. That's who I want to talk about, and I'm fit by daft. But the World Cup is so important, even though it thinks it is, and even though it exploits its own importance. I think the way the World Cup is abused, the way it abuses fans, that was the other thing I didn't mention. That's one of the first things I failed to mention there in my so-called summing up of the thing. That World Cup was, I didn't mention Cristiano Ronaldo also scoring, the first guy to score in 6 different World Cups. So that's a feat. I don't like. I'm pretty sure he's a rapist, but it's not been properly proven as such. But I find him difficult to like now, Cristiano Ronaldo, whereas I used to quite like his pantomime as well. But then you find out stuff about me, think, I don't know about that. But there you go. It's definitely a feat that has to be mentioned. But the prices of tickets, what fans had to pay, how they had to travel, dynamic pricing. It's a horrible phrase. It's just a complete insult to your intelligence. It's like banks telling your identity's been stolen. It's just, my money's been stolen, and you don't want to take responsibility for who's stolen it. It's the same. It's dynamic pricing just means highest bidder, and everybody wants to go to the World Cup, even when it's in the USA. So the ticket prices were absolutely disgusting. So why then? Why? Because it's still. It doesn't matter who's running it or where it is. I mean, it does matter. It matters infinitely, and we have to do everything we possibly can to stop this shit. Even if that includes boycotting World Cups and what we can. But at this moment in time, it is still such an important tournament. It's the trickle-down effect to the rest of football. And the other day, over the last couple of days, I've watched Ingmar Bergman's Persona, which is, it's a hell of a film. It's one of the most important films ever made. They're telling me, I like a bit of art house cinema. I do love a bit of art house cinema. And there's ones I actually genuinely like, as opposed to just watching them so I can be a bit of a wanker about it down the pub or whatever. I don't ever go to the pub these days. I don't know why I keep using that phrase. But I do love it, and I don't know where it sits, but it's like you have to, the minute I was watching Persona, and I watched it in installments because there are other things to do, and I think that tells its own story when you can't quite, sometimes I just sit and watch a football match and I can't take my eyes off the screen, and fuck whatever else I've got to do. Watching an important art house cinema, a legendary film, Bergman, from the 60s. And I've watched 4 or 5 Ingmar Bergman films, and they're amazing. Some of them are absolutely amazing. And it turns out let's not go into Ingmar Bergman. He's a dodgy character in many ways, but I'd watched about half an hour, about 10 minutes of it the other night, and straight away, within the first 2 or 3 seconds, 2 or 3 frames of this film, and the frames is an important thing. I'm like, I've had to see what I think I've seen. It's just a flashing image goes up there, and not only is it an erect penis, which you don't usually see in mainstream telling on your the films you would watch with your wife, for example. You don't normally see. If you watch films with erect penises, that's up to you, each to their own. But like, is that an erect penis in black and white? Is it Ingmar Bergman's? What is going on there? In profile, it's just the actual penis. A right close up, and I'm thinking, it just flashes past, for want of a better expression. And I'm thinking, yeah, that definitely was. And it straight away, it reminds me of Fight Club. I just seen Kevin Keegan, just lost Kevin Keegan, talking about that in my last podcast. He was manager of England when they beat Scotland, we beat us 2-0 at Hampden, we beat them 1-0 at Wembley in the Euro 2000 playoffs. And I was so traumatised by the loss against England. I wasn't at the game. I couldn't get a ticket. I was traumatised by that as well. That's why I joined the Scotland Travel Club every 2 years since then. But I watched it in a pub in the West End, and we get beat 2-0 off England. It was absolutely shit, the game at Hampden. So because I was so depressed, and it'd been a kind of early kick-off, went up to the cinema in Ashton Lane, and went straight into watch it. Let's just go to a movie. Let's just go to a film and just take our mind off it. And I went in to watch Blair Witch Club, Blair Witch Hunt, the Blair Witch, that Blair Witch film. What's it? The Blair Witch Project, Blair Witch Club. Fucking hell. I've been talking too long. I went in and I watched that with my wife, and it was so traumatising. That was so scary. I'm not really a big fan of scary films because I'm quite easily scared with spooky stuff. I then had to go and watch let's just go and watch another film in the same theatre that were showing Fight Club. So I went and watched Fight Club, and in that, it's personas about 2 women's characters, their persona almost merging together to become the same person. And of course, without giving anything away for Fight Club, if you haven't seen it, there's a split personality type thing going on in that film as well. But the Brad Pitt character, he is a projectionist at cinema. That's one of his part-time jobs. And for fun, to amuse himself, and family movies that the cinema is showing, he will splice into the reels just a single frame of a penis. I don't know if it's an erect penis or what. I can't really remember, but it's like, big hairy cock. That's what he says, and it's hilarious. I remember watching it going, that's quite funny, and it shows you it just flashing up. That was a reference to Bert. That's straight away, it's a reference. And I've talked about that for it. That's quite funny, that bit where Brad Pitt does this. I might have been talking to somebody who knows about cinema, who's watched Ingmar Bergman's Persona, and they're thinking, you're a dick. You don't know. No, never mind. The big hairy erect penis I'm watching is you massive knob, because you don't know that that's a reference to Ingmar Bergman's Persona. What do you actually know about cinema? Same as the things you're thinking just now about all the mistakes I've made in this podcast, but what I know about football. But at least, what is the... And there was 7 Psychopaths. What 7 Psychopaths? Martin McDonagh. It's one of the films it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining. Can't help it, even though it's I find Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Fleabag, and all that. Oh no, but it's a good laugh of a film. It's the kind of stuff you watch and you think, I kind of think getting better to watch. You just put it on. I put it on recently, and of course there's a reference in that to one of the characters becomes the Buddhist monk who, in reality, famously self-immolation protest, set himself on fire outside the U.S. Embassy or something in Saigon. It was a protest against the Vietnam War. He set himself on fire. And one of the characters in the 7 Psychopaths becomes that guy. And turns out he's actually about to set himself on fire at that very moment. And I'm thinking, that's quite clever. Didn't realise in Ingmar Bergman's Persona, if I can set himself... And the woman, she's stuck in her room, in her hospital room with the television on, And it's continually showing, the news is continually showing you the full, which she's horrified, the full actual footage of the actual Buddhist monk setting himself on fire at protest against the Vietnam War. Something, basically, I don't know if the World Cup is Hollywood or if it's art house cinema. I don't know if the juniors, or non-league stuff, is that art house cinema or is that tacky porn films or something like that. I don't know what the direct comparison is, but you need to know the influences, and what happens at a World Cup influences everything in football. That's the introduced new VAR protocols, introduced new referee, introduced new rules at World Cups and Euros, because they know they will trickle down from there through the whole. It's the best way to advertise those rules. And so you're like, why are we watching the greatest tournament in the world having to take on board new rules? Because this is how to advertise it through the rest of football. So you need to watch the World Cup. You need to get involved. You need to find out what's going on. You don't need to at all, but I enjoy it. I need to. It was not kind of out and out enjoyment this World Cup. It was a bit hard going at times, but you definitely feel the most important things in football are happening there, and important lessons for the Scotland national team and the England national team, and because I don't know if it's the Champions League, is it art house, but it's Hollywood prices and Hollywood's kind of money. The Champions League, it's very, very tacky in the way the top clubs are monopolising or buying power and confirming it through the Champions League. But it's inarguably where the greatest players go, where the auteurs, the managers go, the great directors, if you like, and the greatest actors all go to the top Champions League clubs, the clubs with the biggest money. So I don't know if that's art house or if it's Hollywood, if it's a combination of both. But you've got to know where all the influences are coming from. And the World Cup has influenced me and influences the whole of football. It made me do a 3-hour podcast. Thanks very much for your time, folks. Club football from now on, mostly, and half-hour podcast at most, definitely. That's the last big pod for ages. Thanks so much for your time, particularly if you've listened to this twice.